just me saying this? Is just this muscle discord going against the Manions here? Well, what about the Washington Post? Okay, let's dive into this, and I want to get your reaction to this. Okay, because why the fuck would the Washington Post, with all their resources, okay, take the time, spend the money, and get their reporters to go out and interview almost 100 people if there was nothing there? Okay.
So my opinion on that is that
all right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Muscle Discord, and I got a very extremely special guest on the show for the first time. Aaron Singerman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I like the very extremely.
Yes,
thank you very much for having me.
Special guest. Well, I'm going to jump into just a quick bio. Obviously, majority of the people know who you are, but I'll just do it for maybe some of the people that don't, that are watching. So Aaron Singerman is an entrepreneur, investor, author, father, and CEO of REDCON1. Aaron has been one of the most influential and polarizing figures in the supplement and bodybuilding industry for over the last decade. From building REDCON1 into a major global brand, to his background in bodybuilding and media, to overcoming major personal and professional challenges, Aaron brings a unique perspective on business, bodybuilding, and the supplement industry, and where the sport is potentially headed in the future here. So, Aaron, man, welcome. Lots to talk about. I'm going to pick your brain. It might get a little heated because we may be disagreeing on some things, but I'm glad you came on the show and had the balls to do so. And obviously, you've done so many podcasts over the years, so this is nothing new for you. But I'll just jump into kind of what triggered this a little bit. Is the interview I gotta
say before you even start. Okay. Before you even start, I am excited to hear. I'm going to ask you some questions. I want to know why please don't have to answer it now because this is your show, not my show. But I am curious why I'm polarizing. I don't disagree that I'm polarizing. I don't know why I'm polarizing. So it's one of those mysteries. I've been in the world of bodybuilding for almost 20 years now. I started off as a fan on the bulletin boards before there was any online presence other than a few bulletin boards such as Get Big, Chad Nichols board, a few other ones that I liked that I participated in. And I came from just a fan who was trying to figure out his way to make money in this industry or really make a name for myself at all, anywhere. And then I've been very fortunate to be able to work my way up with absolutely no help and nobody. I had no assistance. I had people rooting against me for almost the entire 20 years. But somehow I've been able to make a really good living for me and my family, and then been able to create generational wealth in something that I love doing. So you would think that I'd be an incredibly inspirational, certainly not polarizing figure for every fan of the world of bodybuilding or really anything you're passionate about, from going from zero. I have no high school degree. I have no college education. I'm just a fan who was able to create a lot of success almost in spite of everything, not because of anything other than passion. So I think I'd be incredibly relatable to all the bodybuilding fans out there because they would go, holy shit, this guy went from literally nothing, where I was a drug addict that had nothing going on my entire life, and I became a 100 millionaire off of passion alone. So you would think that people would go, holy shit, if this guy can do it, who has no special abilities, no advantages, no help from family, no help from the bodybuilding industry. Most people were trying to squish me and and basically kick me out, but somehow I achieved all this. This shows you that if I can do it, then anybody can. Yeah. So it's a curious thing because I don't disagree. I agree I'm polarizing. I don't know. I can't tell you why. But maybe we'll find out during the interview.
We'll see. Again, we're going to find out in the interview. Great intro there. And
what do you think? Why
you're polarizing in the sense that you're very, you're good at getting people's attention and taking over a conversation, taking over a narrative, and it's very polarizing in that sense that you give off that sense of
did I just do that?
It's just it's a combination of it, but I do agree, your story is quite fascinating and inspirational as well because of where you've come from. And now again, $100 million company and living the life and traveling the world and building this huge brand and changing people's lives and generating wealth and all these things. I mean, that's the American dream. You've done it. You've achieved it.
Thank you. I hope so. It certainly hasn't come without tremendous pitfalls.
Yes, ups and downs.
I know we're going to go over that.
Yeah, we're going. So, and it's good. But it's good because it's not. Life isn't perfect. Okay, you're gonna have ups and downs. Shit's gonna happen and come out of the blue, and you got to be able to face it and overcome it. And
that much is guaranteed, right? That much is guaranteed.
Yes, it's not a perfect straight up line. It's up and down. So, all right. So yeah, let's jump into the Natalie Nichols interview that I posted, and you saw that, and you made a comment on it, and you were very blunt in your assessment of, Natalie saying that, she saw a text message and Jim Mannion had sent this to the head judge and, picking the winners or, people that were going to be competing in the show. And she didn't have any proof of that message or anything like that. And she just said, this is, an allegation from her. Right. And then you made a comment and said 100% Jim Mannion would not do this. There's no reason. There's no benefit for Jim to do this. Why would he do this? What is he going to gain from doing this? Mm-hmm. What makes you say that and be so certain? When you say 100%, that means so I don't like, it's either just your gut is telling you or how you're not there with Jim. You're not there at the shows to see what he's doing. So it's kind of a bold thing to just go out on the record and say that.
Sure. So I'm gonna take it back just a minute. Going back, you gave my bio and we talked a little bit just now, but I want to give people a little bit more context on who I am before I was the owner of REDCON1 or even the owner of Blackstone Labs or worked with Kai Green or CT Fletcher or Dana and Baylor, any of those other things that I've done. Before all of that, I was a bodybuilding correspondent, and I was very fortunate enough. I felt extremely lucky to go to every big bodybuilding show and most of the small bodybuilding shows, or in between. I would say not a ton of small ones, but certainly a lot of in between national level shows. And I sat behind the judging table for, without exaggeration, hundreds and hundreds of these shows, hundreds and hundreds. I've been to every Olympia for the last, this will be coming up on 20 years. I've been behind the judging panel or in front of the judging panel in the case of the Olympia. I've been all of them. I mean, I've been to every one of them. I've been backstage. I've interviewed the winners. I've talked to the judges. I have personal relationships with every head judge since before Steve Weinberger was head judging. I mean, Steve was certainly head judging probably then, but from Sandy Rinaldi to people that are no longer with us that have moved on in their career or been kicked out and moved on in their career, I've been around all of them, everybody. From the people that you guys know and the names you're familiar with, the names you don't know. So I've interacted with them. I've been on very different sides where I was media. And so I was at all the shows with the competitors, with photographers, and with judges for the last 20 years. So I've had the opportunity to do those things. Now, I've also been the title sponsor of every one of Steve Weinberger's shows. Mm-hmm. Every one I've been the title sponsor. I've been the title sponsor of the Arnold Classic. I've been the title sponsor of the Olympia. I'm friends with Dan Solomon. I'm friends with Jake Wood. I knew Robin Chang and that whole crew. I knew Alan Donnelly. I knew Peter. I knew everybody. Yes. And I've interacted with all these people. So I'm saying this from a position of knowledge in every capacity of the sport, that there is no, and has never been, as long as I've been, a reason for somebody in that kind of position, as far as I know, to make a bikini competitor win. Or make the top of the sport does not care. Now, I've been, like I said, been the title sponsor of these events. And I remember when I was working for Dave Palumbo, I remember people saying, Hide shouldn't have won that show. It's because Gaspari was the title sponsor, right? This happened many times. I've heard this. So it's politics.
Yes.
I heard this, right? And I remember being like, maybe Hide shouldn't have won that show, I remember there was one where I believe Hide beat Branch, and people were like, I think that was it. This is a long time ago. We're talking about like before it was even the Europa. I think it was called the Southwest Pro or something like that. And he won. And people were like, there's no way. Obviously, Rich Gaspari paid. And then I've also been on the flip side of that, been the title sponsor of all those shows as REDCON1 and even Blackstone. We title sponsored a bunch of shows. Yeah. And not one time did somebody ever come up to me and say, hey, do you want Logan to win? Do you want Kai? We sponsored the Arnold when Kai won all three Arnolds. I was backstage. I was in the judging panel for Dynamic Muscle. Every one of those Arnolds that he won. Did Bob Lormer or Jim Lormer ever come to me and go, hey, do you want Kai to win? Can you sponsor? If you do, will we have Kai? Never. Nobody ever said that. And so I don't believe, for multiple reasons, that that's ever been a thing or is a thing. But even if we remove all that out of it and we just say strictly based on the money, because what motivates people to do things? There has to be a benefit. And so where is Jim Mannion at in life right now? He's 80 years old. I think it's safe to say that he doesn't need the money, that he's made a lot of money in the sport. He's created the opportunity for even more money in the sport. If there wasn't for Jim Mannion, me and you wouldn't be sitting here talking. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. He's created opportunity for literally generations of people now to make a living in the sport, myself included, big time. I don't know where I'd be without Jim Mannion. It certainly wouldn't be as an entrepreneur and an owner of businesses, because I've only done this. This is what I love in one capacity or another. So why would Jim Mannion, what's the upside for him to say, I don't want this lady, which I don't know, by the way, this bikini competitor, to get second or to lose, because I want, let's just say Ashley Kaltwasser or whoever, right? That's a bikini competitor I still know. Whatever one you want to pick. I want her to win. Why would he do that? What's the upside? Who benefits? He certainly doesn't benefit. These sponsors who are athletes of, in this case, I think Ashley Kaltwasser works for my old friend Jared Wheat at High Tech. You think Jared's reaching out to Jim Mannion and saying, hey, make sure Ashley wins. I'll wire you an extra $100,000. Or even for Jim, it could be $10 million. He ain't doing it. Because not just for the money, but imagine what happens if Jim Mannion or Steve Weinberger or any of these gentlemen that I've known for many years, if she was right and she had proof and she had documentation, what would happen to him? What does the downside look like for him? His legacy is destroyed. He has Tyler, who's running everything. He has his son, who's very involved. He has probably Tyler's kids that are one day coming. They'll be involved. So you have this generational legacy you've created that is going to be blown away by a bit of money. And dollars certainly is no bit of money, but Jim Mannion and created, it's a little money. So I think that it's unrealistic to say that somebody who has been this instrumental in creating this kind of legacy would waste it all or potentially even risk it all. It's like saying if I was really, really hungry and I went to the grocery store, what are the chances that I steal a hoagie? Zero. Why would I do that? With everything you guys know about me and all the things I've been through in my life, am I going to steal that $6 sandwich because I'm real hungry? No, I'm going to pay for it. Even if I'm an unethical motherfucker and I'm going to do whatever I want, I'm still paying for that damn sandwich. Yeah. So like it doesn't make sense.
I see. Okay. And of course, and that's your opinion and your experience, and you're bringing your context into it, which is a extensive background in bodybuilding and being part of these shows from behind the scenes. Okay. So that's, point taken. And then, so I'll just give you a little bit of context here with that, what Natalie said. Is that she saw a text message. Okay, someone showed her a text message. Wasn't referring to her show or anything like that, anything recent. Just someone showed her a text message that Jim allegedly sent to a head judge. Okay, so that happened, and then I aired the interview, and then an IFBB pro messaged me and said, "Hey Matt, I'm the one that has that text message, and I've been holding on to it for 10+ years." I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is an IFBB pro." Okay, DM'd me on Instagram. Wants to remain anonymous, but he said, "You can share this, man." Okay. So he's had this for a long time. And I'll share it with you exclusively. It's the first time anyone's going to see this, including you. So let me just share this for you.
Let me ask you, I'm not doubting, and I'm going to see the message, right? Yeah. But do you realize how easy it is to create a DM from somebody anonymously? Yeah.
I knew that was the first thing you were going to say. It's AI created. I knew you were going to.
Not even AI. You could have created it 10 years ago. I mean, you could send me the metadata and I can have my guys take a look at it. But I can tell you.
Of course. Everyone's going to speculate.
Messages. If I change your name to Jim Mannion, it's going to look like Jim is sending me the StreamYard link for me to go do this interview. I think what you have to think is, what's more logical, that Jim sent this message or that this IFBB pro has some cross to bear, he's unhappy, or she's unhappy. I mean, competitors all the time, since the beginning of since the beginning of the IFBB and NPC, I am very confident that every competitor feels like they should have placed better, feels like politics were involved, feels like they were at their 100% and another girl or guy was at their 85%, and somehow they were unjustly placed. Somehow there was some political, somebody was talking to somebody, another judge told somebody else. But by the way, is it possible that this young lady was told by a judge that if she was at her 100% and this other girl is her 85%, she should have won, for sure. The difference is that's all subjective. And this is still just one judge, you know, and everybody feels like they should have won, and everybody hears.
Yeah, she's not complaining. She's not complaining about placings or anything like that. She's talking
about conspiracy.
She's talking about what she experienced, okay, what she heard backstage when she went to get feedback from the judge, and the winner was standing in front of her talking to the judge. She heard that conversation. Her and her coach were there to vouch for it, and she was shocked, right? And she was like, "I can't. Did we just hear this?" What? So yeah, she's just voicing her opinion, and she was just outside having a cigarette, smoking on, and talking about this experience she went through. She didn't reach me and say, "Man, I want to come on your show and talk about this and talk about Jim Mannion and try and expose him." Nothing like that. I reached out to her because I just by chance saw that. I wasn't following her before that. I didn't even know pretty much who she was as a competitor, and I just saw that pop up on my Explorer feed. I'm like, "Oh, what the fuck is this?" So I watched it, and it's like, it's pretty bold allegation she's making here, right? So I don't know, what is she going to gain from that? Everyone in the comments was destroying her in the comments. Was like,
she gained exposure.
She doesn't. She doesn't.
She gave name recognition. I mean, Jim Mannion, I'm sure I would be willing to bet didn't know who she was before, and he might now. I mean, this is.
She doesn't compete though. She's not competing, right?
Her name is IFBB Pro, whatever, isn't it?
Isn't
that her
handle but she stopped competing because of this, right?
Okay.
So the text message here from this judge, head judge, who is disgruntled and does not like what is happening, wrote this. Okay, he wrote these little notes around the side of the text here, and this text message is allegedly from James B. Mannion, which is his full name. Is James, not Jim. It's James, and that's what he refers to him by, because that's back in the day. That's what people called him more, is James versus Jim, and so that's
I've never heard.
Yeah, I know. That's James B. Mannion. That's his real name.
I've never heard anybody call him James B. Mannion, including his wife Debbie and his kids.
Okay, well, that's you. Doesn't mean it's not other people.
I heard him called Jimmy Mannion by his good friend from many years ago, but that's it.
Yeah, his name is James B. Mannion, as we know.
I'm Aaron Ellis Singerman. Have you ever heard anybody call me Aaron Ellis Singerman?
So you'll see here. So this is the text. Okay, Friday, June 19th. These are my people. Please make sure they don't get lost in shuffle. And
why are they doing? Why does he need to? Why do they need to do that? Why do you need to call it out and say
these are my people?
Are they hoping to get a favor from James B. Mannion to place him higher? It sounds like it.
No, this is Jim sending the text message to the head judge.
So Jim is sending to the head judge.
Yes,
Fred Smalls. Don't make sure Fred Smalls and Steven number 3 that these are his guys and that don't let him lost.
Not and saying this is more clearly.
I love Fred Smalls. You think Fred Smalls?
Yeah, no, he's been on my show too. I'm not saying he's involved in this, but I'm saying
like I know Fred Smalls very well. Do you think he was favored at some point? He had extra favor from the IFBB. He did not. He's not known for placing well at the Olympia. I don't think he's ever made top 10.
So there's more to this. So, and again, everyone on this list isn't winning. Okay.
No, I don't even know who Brian P is.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So this is Friday, June 19th, 2015. Okay. This is for the IFBB Pro Europa Dallas show.
I was there.
Everyone on. Okay. Right. Everyone on that list was in this show. I'll show you to that. Fred won the show.
Just to be clear,
Fred won the show.
We are saying that this is Jim Mannion's text to the head judge at the show.
So now, if that head judge, well, that's what we say. Now that this is out, that head judge can come out and say, "No, I didn't send this message," or "Yeah, I did." Obviously, he was disgruntled, right? Sharing this with his. So this was from his girlfriend at the time. Okay, the pro that messaged me, who got this from the judge's girlfriend, that's how he got this. Okay, because he knows her, right? And then there's other people that have seen this text message that he's spoken about. One that's currently competing.
Was this a judge? Was this a judge from California?
I don't know. We don't know. He's not. I don't know. That's what's going to come out from this is the IFBB Pro Europa Dallas. So if anyone knows who was the head judge,
I feel like I can pull it up pictures on my phone if we want. I think I could pull it up. 2015 Dallas. Let's see if I can get that. I'm wondering who it was, because there was a judge that was not so good in 2015, but I don't remember. Oh, I don't have it on this phone anymore.
And so, okay, so that's the text message. And then this is what he wrote, these notes, okay? He says, the system of top trainers work or favor, these then get told to me by James B. Mannion. Okay? All right. So that is that. And this is the show, right? Where Fred won. Okay. And the rest of the people that are all on this list as well, which you guys can go back and search. I can put the link in the description later. But everyone on that list had competed in the show. Strange. Why this random text from 11 years ago is the one? Like if this is if this is going to be faked, why not go all out and fake it? Put like Derek Lunsford and what are all the big names on that text? Why a random 2015 show? No, I'm saying no. If you're saying if this was a faked message, right? Why not go all out and fake the fuck out of it and put like Derek and Andrew or who big names on the text message? Why a random text message from 2015? Okay, that doesn't right. Like
sounds more believable, I suppose.
So like you know what I'm saying. So
if you got that, you would. I mean, honestly,
why wouldn't I go big? Why wouldn't it go bigger than that?
To be honest with you, I do agree that the sport needs greater transparency in judging and feedback. That's why it's so impressive what Tyler Mannion's been doing by posting his feedback and like breaking down the shows. It's one of the things that I thought was so impressive. Like,
can I ask you, do you think it's a conflict of interest that Tyler Mannion, the vice president of the entire pro league, is a head judge?
Why would it be a conflict of interest?
It's intimidating. Your judge is sitting next to the vice president.
The judge is saying no. Yeah. I mean, he's been a judge since he's old enough to judge. I mean, what do you mean? Like, I think it's a conflict of interest if your head judge
to have an executive of a company, of the league, of a private business, also judging the shows of the product that he puts out. He's also judging that.
No, I don't think so.
Not having independent judges being the head judge instead.
Back in the day, one of the things that I didn't like is when the head judge or a judge also has competitors that they coach in the show. That I wasn't a fan of. Tyler doesn't coach anybody. Neither does anybody else anymore. But I didn't used to like that when we would have a judge who was a well-known coach as well, because then you have a vested interest in seeing your competitor do well. Tyler doesn't give a shit, man. These guys are. I don't want to make it sound like they're just so rich but they've been very successful. They don't need to have a certain competitor when they have no vested interest in a competitor. You know, there's no like. I have never heard Jim or any of these guys, even like when you go to the NPC gym now in Pittsburgh, everybody gets to go. It's not like a special person gets to get the invite, and that's not reality anymore. So no, I don't think it's a vested interest because I don't think he's vested in a competitor. I think he's vested in the success of the IFBB Pro League, which I think is a good thing because he wants the judging to be good because he wants the IFBB Pro League to be successful. And if it's corrupt, it's not successful because then people get disenfranchised and don't want to compete.
Well, that's very true. And, you know, and then, so I want to build more context behind this because it's just me saying this. It's just this muscle discord going against the Manions here. Well, what about the Washington Post? Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's dive into this. And I want to get your reaction to this. Okay. Because why the fuck would the Washington Post, with all their resources, okay, take the time, spend the money, and get their reporters to go out and interview almost 100 people if there was nothing there? Okay.
So my opinion on that is that I'm not a big fan of the Washington Post or mainstream media. And I think that mainstream media can twist the story in any direction we want. And that's why it's good we can have this discourse.
Yes.
Like you and I. And by the way, I have no problem. We talked about, or you mentioned in the beginning, me and you disagreeing. I think disagreeing is part of being an American. We have the ability and the freedom to disagree. And I'll always disagree with you or anybody else in his best and most polite and constructive a way possible. And this is a good example. There were a lot of people interviewed in the story. I'm familiar with the story.
Yep.
And there are a lot of very disgruntled people in this story, whether it's people that were excommunicated from the industry or competitors that didn't do well. I'm not going to go through each line of this story and tell you what's true or not true. I am not an expert on all these people. And I did read this at the time, and I was very sad for Jim and the industry as a whole, because this reflects poorly on all of us. So I was not happy about the story. I was sad for everybody involved. And I thought that what a shitty I mean, look, I've been a victim of this type of thing myself. We're going to talk about it, I'm sure, at some point. Okay. I had bad press about me where I'm like, man, this isn't true. Or this thing that people that I thought were my friends said about me, where they said, well, Aaron is this, Aaron is this, Aaron did this. And I'm like, man, what is my recourse as an individual to combat fake news or false story, a false narrative, or people saying that they heard this thing, just like this lady competitor saying she saw this thing. Well, what if they say, I heard this, I was told this, somebody told me? It just sucks because that's where we're at. And if you can communicate that in such a large way. Obviously, I didn't have any story written about me in the Washington Post. I didn't justify that. But I read this story and it makes me sad.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give people context as to the Mannion family and their history in the sport, and what the reporting was done on them about this. And I'll just read a quick paragraph here, and then we move on. Many of those who worked alongside Jim Mannion have turned against him, like you said, and accused him of fostering an atmosphere of intimidation, which I said about Tyler at the judging table, compromising the sport with conflicts of interest, which I discussed with you already. You denied that exists. And self-dealing Manion went from an elected president of a small nonprofit to a leader of a company that now dominates a multi-million-dollar industry. He has turned the organization into a family dynasty, appointing his grandson, Tyler Mannion, and vice president. Tyler's father, J.M. Mannion, was paid nearly $900,000 over 3 years by the charity for photography services.
Okay.
300 grand a year.
Yes. So I will say there's a bunch of stuff in here that I can personally identify with. I've had over 1,000 employees working for me. I do not have 1,000 now. Many of those employees, whether they have any reason to be justifiably upset or not, which I do my very best to be the best employer and leader that I can be, but I'm sure some people have a legitimate reason to be sad or mad. Many, many more have no legitimate reason, but they're disgruntled, just like a competitor will be sad that they didn't win the show. A employee would be sad, mad, disgruntled that they were fired. I have had so many athletes that I have done right by, incredibly right by, who were mad at me after the fact. I have had a very well-known Ivy pro that I gave $100,000 to leave their contract because I thought we were all friends. I said, you know what? I'm cutting you, but I'm going to give you $100,000 as an exit bonus. And I was like, man, I did right by this guy. We're going to stay friends. And you know what he did? As soon as he got his check and cashed it, he went right out and told everybody, Aaron's a piece of shit. And it's like, holy shit. I thought I just gave it.
Yeah.
This happens.
And I see the point you're trying to make, that that's the main go-to is, they're disgruntled. They're just they got kicked out. So now they're clapping back and this and that.
It's very hard to look at yourself and be honest about like, hey, maybe I didn't give 100%. By the way, I haven't given 100% plenty of things in my life, but I can honestly look at myself and say, I could have done better. Even talking about employees, I could have done better with my employees. I'm not perfect by any means. There are employees out there, I'm sure, that are mad at me, that are unhappy. Out of the 1,000, there's some that go, he didn't do right by me, and they're probably right. So I could have done better, and I'm sure Jim Mannion can say the same thing to some degree, and there's some competitors that probably got overlooked, and they have a legitimate reason to have a gripe. Nobody is perfect. So everything you read, I can identify with and understand why you would read it and ask questions. But ultimately, like that story and what you just read it resonates with me personally, and it makes me sad because I know the person. I know Jim Mannion and his family very well and have for many years now. And I would tell you that not only has it been a blessing to know the guy, but it has been a humongous blessing for our entire industry. These people who were mad at him couldn't have been mad at him if it wasn't for his presence, because he couldn't have had an opportunity.
I know, but that doesn't give an excuse for potentially things that are bad to happen to them.
You're right. Bad things happen and people make mistakes. And I can't say what Jim did or didn't do that wasn't right, but I can say he's done one hell of a lot more right than wrong. And, I honestly, that paragraph of the story was great because I can identify with everything that was written there. But I'm not an expert in this story, and I can only do so much defending before it gets out of my capacity. Yeah. I love the guy. I think he's a fantastic human. I'm very grateful to know him, but I'm not capable of being a defense attorney for the Mannion family. I would love to have a family dynasty of my own one day. I have 3 little boys. And if I do everything right, hopefully they all have 3 little boys, and we can all create a family dynasty that the Washington Post writes about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see what you're saying. Of course, he's been very good to you, and, so you're going to say good things, right? I mean, that's your experience. You have had no bad experiences with Jim Mannion. So why would you say anything otherwise, right?
Just keep in mind, I want to be
these
clear.
people have had bad experiences with Jim Mannion, so they have something else to say.
And I get it. But just to be
these
clear,
women too that were in this investigation as well, that came out well after the fact.
Talk about that. That's not part of the industry that I've been involved in. I will tell you that it's not just that Jim Mannion has been very good to me. He's been very good to all of us, yourself included, because we have this opportunity to talk about this and make money and get advertisers, because if he wouldn't have, there wouldn't have been this opportunity. The NPC was created by Jim Mannion, and the IFBB Pro League has been, rocket shipped up. All the new stuff, all the new pieces of the business that have come out in terms of, when I was started in this industry, there was only men's and women's female bodybuilding and fitness. That was it. It was it. There was all there was. And all this stuff has been an advent.
And again, that's not even what we're talking about. We're not talking about all the classes and divisions that he's built over the years and growing the sport. Obviously, he's done that. That's not, never take that away from Jim Mannion and what he's done on that side of the things. Obviously, he's done some good things for the sport, obviously. And that's what I'm not discrediting any of that. I'm just more looking into the conduct and the transparency within the Manion family and how they run things. And this report really deep dives into that, especially when it's talking about the Washington Post reported allegedly from female competitors involved in sexual exploitation, sexualized photography connected to the bodybuilding officials, J.M. Mannion. Well, that is,
I can't, that's the stuff I have no ability to comment on that. All I can tell you is that I don't think that Jim's done some good things. I think he's done almost all the good things. And when you talk about me benefiting, I have benefited in the same way you benefited. Jim Mannion has benefited much more financially off of my relationship with him than he has. He's never given me any money ever. He's never sponsored anything I've done. He's provided the opportunity to give sponsorships to them for advertising, because I believe in the platform, because he created the platform and created the opportunity for me to make the money in the first place. He's never given me any money. I've never received anything from him at all. $0 from Jim to me, dollars from me to Jim. So he's not defending my relationship because it's so beneficial to me. The creation of the whole thing was beneficial, but my relationship, Jim could be on here talking about me and you could be like, wow, you've benefited so much, because he has, because I've contributed a lot of money to his industry, the thing he's created. But I just, I don't want to overdo it, because I feel like I've now gotten to the level where I'm at the point of overdoing it.
On that. Well, and my final take on that then, Aaron, to you is, you're right. Let's say you were in this position, right? You're owner of a big company and some allegations are, the Washington Post does an article on Aaron Singerman. Comes out and says, Aaron's photographer was involved in taking some sexual photos of some female brand ambassadors that you have. And you're like, fuck no, I never. Why? What the hell are you talking about? This is all fake news. I'm sure Aaron Singerman would call up his lawyer, say, we're going to sue the fuck out of the Washington Post because we know they got a lot of money. This is defaming my name, my brand, my business. This is terrible for me. It's all lies. I'm going to sue them. Jim Mannion never did that.
How do you know? My question to you would be, how do you know that all of that wasn't contemplated? Went through the process. How do we know that there was never letters sent to the Washington Post?
It wasn't. There was no reaction. There was no suit put against the Washington Post. Why didn't he do it?
I think there's some, I can't speak to that. I don't know. And I also don't know that what he did or didn't do behind the scenes. I'm sure that, and I'm speculating now, but I'm sure Jim did what he thought was wise in conjunction with what lawyers told him based on this. But there is an element of the news. You're talking, let me say from my perspective, this happened to me. Let's put it in Aaron Singerman, this just happened, your situation. I don't know what I would do. What first thing I would do would contact a lawyer. I've had the misfortune of dealing with a lot of lawyers. And so I would call my lawyer and I would say, here's what happened. Here's the situation. And there's a good chance, knowing how lawyers think, that they would go, the news cycle passes fast. How big a deal do you want to make this? Right. And there is a real thing. Well, that's true. If you and this is not Jim, this is Aaron Singerman talking.
Yes.
You have to think, how big a deal do I want to make this? How big a war do you want to have? I've had lawsuits where I have been sued for stuff that we had absolutely nothing to do with, that I've settled. Because I don't want it. What's the point in dealing with it? You just go, there's only so much. If somebody came in and says, hey, I'm going to sue you for $10,000 for this, I might just go, okay. Now, on the flip side that we can get into later, is I had the federal government come after me and said, you did this and the other thing. And man, there was no intention in my entire soul, being, anything, my brain, my family. There was no way I was pleading guilty. No way. Impossible. because I knew I could go to battle on this. I could die on a hill for this. But then when you actually get down to brass tacks and you go, well, you're going to potentially serve 10 plus years of your life, or in this case, you're going to get a media onslaught. You're going to encourage people to keep coming at you, or you just take it and go take the L and move on with your life, because it's not going to end your entire life. So I don't know how this was thought of, but I know for me in my life, there's been times where I've taken the L because I go, you know what? Maybe it's not worth the uphill battle that could end up being much, much worse than just taking the L. So that's me speculating. That's me speculating.
Yeah. No, and again, I mean, I don't know, like, why they didn't decide to do that, and especially with the sexual allegations with these female competitors that came out, why they wouldn't, fight that vehemently against the Washington Post. And you say, for example, Trump. Trump gets accused of a lot of things, and he sues the fuck out of these newspapers and these magazine companies, and he usually wins, right? But so it was just interesting that
he's got. I mean, it's hard to compare myself to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has an incredible tolerance to fight. He has a humongous bankroll with many, many lawyers, and he has had so much bad press that it doesn't even matter anymore. Like, you think Trump is worried about some allegations from somebody, he goes, okay, let's go, right? Because it's one of 1,000 allegations. So it's a different situation. It's hard to be, I don't know if it's analogous to say Donald Trump and Aaron Singerman, or in this case, Mannion, because this is like a new thing where I would be, if that happened to me, I would be devastated and I wouldn't know how to handle it. Whereas, Trump is like, bring it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a different ball game with Trump. But anyways, that's kind of, a little bit of context with what's going on and why, why me? Why am I the only media outlet in bodybuilding that's kind of taking this route? RX isn't going to do this. The Menace podcast, they're not going to do this. Cutler Cat, they're not going to talk about this, or but I do, because at the end of the day, these athletes are speaking out, and it's always the same story. Oh, well, they're disgruntled. They're just it's the athlete's fault. And that sucks that that's the narrative that comes out of this, when that's the defense, right? Oh, that's the athletes are in the fault.
I mean, I think there's a lot of legitimacy in that defense. That being said, I do think there's nothing wrong with asking the questions in a respectful manner, and I think you've done that. And I definitely think that in the past, when we've seen these type of allegations discussed, it's not done in a respectful way, in which Jim Mannion certainly deserves the respect of anybody doing a show like this, or anybody talking about this, because there's just no chance for anybody to do any of it without him being here and putting forth the kind of Herculean effort it takes to create something out of nothing. So I think that this is the right way to do it, and I don't expect him or any of those of his family members or team to do it. So I'm happy to come here and hopefully give you do my best to give a rational explanation in terms of defending logic and reason from what I can deduce from all this stuff, and knowing the person personally in a fashion where I can't just defend logic, but I can defend where these guys are coming from, and I hope that I did that well. And I'm glad. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking questions. I think that asking questions is what this country was founded on, disagreements, and I think that this is an important thing to be able to do.
Yeah, just have an open discussion. That's what we have the right and the freedoms to do. So in a cordial way. So I appreciate that. Okay, so let's move on from that. I know we had another little battle on Lee Haney's comments. Right?
I love Lee Haney, by the way.
Love Lee Haney, right? 8-time Mr. Olympia, and one of the nicest guys in our industry. And for him to come out very harshly and say, "I don't respect judges that have not stepped on stage," he did not hold back. That interview comes out tomorrow. But this won't come out then. But anyway, it's coming out. So yeah. And you said, I do not agree with Lee Haney.
I do not agree with that.
Let's get into it. Why not?
Before I even say, I just have to give full respect to Lee Haney, not just Lee Haney, the bodybuilder. I honestly don't care about Lee Haney, the bodybuilder. I care about Lee Haney, the human being. Lee Haney, the human being, is one solid human. Like, forget bodybuilding, forget being a fantastic athlete. We're about to talk about athletes versus judges, which is judges need to be athletes. Lee Haney he's on Mount Olympus in terms of human beings. Lee Haney had to get stopped from giving away his Olympia trophies so they could be auctioned away for charity. Like, Mr. Olympia. I mean, Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia is great, but Lee Haney's better. So he is a great guy. I've interacted with him many times. I've had the chance to know him and speak to him, and I've always been impressed by the human he is. Now, that doesn't mean we can't disagree with Lee Haney, just like we could talk about other things that are controversial. I think that when you talk about bodybuilding judges, it's like talking about anything else in sports. If we talk about Michael Jordan, is Michael Jordan a fantastic basketball player? Is the best in my opinion, he's the best of all time. Was Michael Jordan a great executive in the sport of basketball? Was he a great talent scout? Is he somebody that is the best commentator in basketball? No, I don't think so at all. I think he is not even close. And I think that when we're thinking about judges being able to perform in the world of bodybuilding, a lot of the bodybuilders that we talked about, even before the show started, we were talking about all the bodybuilders I've interviewed back when I did podcasts or when I was doing it for Dave Palumbo. I've interviewed the best of the best. Some of the legends of our sport. A lot of them had either no interest in judging bodybuilding, had tremendous genetic ability where it's very difficult for them to think of, bodybuilding other than their physique and what they accomplished. And then even more so, they almost exclusively for me, I interviewed men's professional bodybuilding. So are they going to be a good bikini judge? Are they going to be a good classic physique judge? Are they going to be a good, many of the bodybuilders that I grew up loving, I think I can safely say, when you talk about any of the men wearing board shorts, they're going to say, the men's physique division, they're going to say, this is ridiculous. I don't like it. I think that it's tough. I mean, it's like an actor. Leonardo DiCaprio is a fantastic actor, right? He's won an Oscar before. Should he be the best? Is he the best movie critic? Does he have to have an Oscar? Does Siskel and Ebert, right back in the day, did they need to be an actor to judge movies? I don't think so, right? That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, of course. And I do see that side of it too, right? And great valid points to make. Do you have to be, there's the baseball commentators, they can call the game like no other, but they've never really played baseball that much, right? So they're not athletic at all. But so I do see that if you study the craft enough and you're involved in the sport long enough, you can learn the ins and outs of it and the posing and the conditioning and level, all that stuff. But so I agree with you that way. I'm not disagreeing with you on that someone that has not competed can learn the craft and become a good judge. But I think you can be a better judge if you have a little bit of that on-stage experience. You've been there, you've dieted, you've gone through that process. I think you'd be a little bit more optimal as a judge. Now, you're right. Not all pro bodybuilders want to be judges, nor would they even make good judges. But there's a lot of bodybuilders that just competed. They're not top of the top in the sport, but they're involved in bodybuilding. They love what they do. And I think more of those type of competitors would make for better judges. And so that's what I say. I'm not speaking on behalf of Lee. Lee just outright said, he's very blunt about it in his assessment.
Do you think we have enough bodybuilders that have the patience or the interest in judging? Judging is something that requires a lot of patience, and it's not very well rewarded. It's not like you make a bunch of money or your people clap for a judge.
I think I don't know why the reason why there's not more bodybuilding judges. I've heard things where they really don't want to have a lot of these judges as past pro bodybuilders on the judging panel because they may see, and this is where the conspiracy comes in. They may see things and, they want to control the narrative and they don't want them talking. So they just kind of get, people that aren't really known in the industry as judges and, they're up on the panel and we can control those people, those judges a lot better than say a past former pro athlete on the judging panel, right?
I got something for you when you're done. I got something.
Okay. So that's kind of what some people say. Well, that's why. I was speaking to a legend in their sport again on this privately, and he was like, "That's why. It's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of them on the panel. It's because you can't be controlled. They're gonna feel what the fuck's going on here? What are you guys doing, right? So they want to have control over the panels. That's just
All right. So I love this this one. So there's this scientific precept. It's called Occam's razor. And Occam's razor basically says that the simplest explanation is usually true. And so I love that because that's how I kind of judge. I look at almost everything in life, whether it's a conspiracy theory or somebody's opinion or somebody's motivations. I look at that through that same prism of Occam's razor. So with this in particular, let's look at it through Occam's razor. Is it possible that, or what's more likely, that the judging panel, Jim Mannion, and the powers that be don't want their judging panel, they don't want the judging panel coerced into making a decision that's outside of their control. So this cabal of very powerful people is controlling all of these bodybuilding shows by putting their particular picked person into the board? Or is it possible that those professional bodybuilders are just too lazy and don't want the very, very difficult task of sitting at a boring judging panel for 6, 8, 10 hours in a day for almost no money? I happen to believe that it's the latter. That I don't, because you asked me, can I be a good judge? Absolutely. I've sat behind the judging panel or even next to them in some occasions for hundreds and hundreds of shows. Well, Aaron, why don't you want to be part of the judging panel? Could I ask Jim Mannion and say, hey, Jim, Steve, I want to be a judge one day. I want to be a judge. Could I go through the process of doing it? I 100% could. Why don't I want to do it? Because it's not rewarding. It's boring. It's slow. And because ultimately it's a hard job, and I'd rather be doing something else.
Yeah,
you can't look at your phone. You can't play around. You're not supposed to be.
If you've seen,
you want to be? Would you like to go all over the country and all over the world for almost no money to judge bikini competitors and men's physique guys all day?
It just depends. It all depends on the individual, right? I mean, me and you, no, we wouldn't want to do that. But there's some bodybuilders that they just love the sport and they're obsessed with it, and they
love it.
We obviously, me and you love it, but I'm just saying, at certain levels of this, and it's hit or miss with that. But
because you can't just so you know, and not just so that people watching know, there are fun shows to do. If Jim said to me, or whoever, I'm saying Jim because we're talking about Jim, but if Tyler or Steve or Sandy reaches out to me and says, hey, Aaron, would you be a judge at this year's Olympia in September? I'd say, hell yeah, I'd love it. Sure, let's do it. If they say, do you want to judge Team Universe for 20 hours of judging, a few weeks from now in New Jersey, I'm going to be like, hell no. But that's not part of, you don't get to pick and choose. You have to judge whatever they need you to judge. You don't just get to do the Olympia once a year. You're going to do all of the shows or many of the shows. And many of them are not the most glamorous. So it's tough.
It's tough. It's a tough debate to have, and who's better than the other. And I agree with some of the points you made. And I think maybe you could also see the valid points where it'd be good to have a competitor.
There are, by the way, you put me.
There are actually, yes.
There are pros who would do a fantastic job. Milos, I think, would be amazing. Like there are people that are judges that could be judges that would be great. I don't know if Milos would even do it. I think
no, of course, no, but no, we have our picks that would make a good judge. But anyways, we could go forever on that. But I see what you're saying there. Now, do you think? Now, again, talking to this person, they think that there's not enough international involvement on the judging panel, especially at the Olympia and the Arnolds. They also think, why is Steve still in that position? Head judge, 50 years almost. Rotate it out. Get a new head judge and get some new blood, get some fresh eyes in there. You have Steve, intimidating guy, right? I've met Steve, we talked to Steve. I've been reamed out on the phone by Steve. He's very intimidating. When you're sitting next to him on the judging panel and he's like, this person, come on, this person. And he's pushing towards a certain, you kind of go in line with, So it's just people could be intimidated. And why not switch it up? Change it up, rotate these judges every Olympia. Steve isn't the head judge all the time, right? They want to see change. They want to see new blood come in there. You got this guy that's been there forever. Great experience, which you can say, well, maybe that's why he's there, because he's been there for so long. He should be the head judge and be at the Olympia and doing that. I don't agree with that. I think we should have new judges stepping in that have been around long enough, but give them a chance to be a head judge at the Olympia, and maybe we'll get a different outcome. Maybe it'll be like, oh shit, this is. So what's your take on always having Tyler and Steve at the major big shows, always as the head judge?
I don't have a opinion that would. I think that if we had a different judge, that would be cool too. I don't know how different. I've never sat on a judging panel, so I can't say that having I mean, Sandy has certainly been head judge many times. So there's been other people.
Sandy too, yeah.
There's been many other people that have been head judges of many different shows. But at the most important show, you're right. Generally, they have the most senior head judges based on seniority and experience. But it would be interesting to see somebody else do that. I think that when you have like you mentioned international judges, and I've seen this said before, why don't they have, instead of flying out people to be there at, let's say, the Prague Pro. And I've been to Prague multiple times to see that show. And usually they will fly out. I think not usually, every time they'll fly somebody out from America to head judge that show. Back in the day, I believe like in Brazil, we had Lee Thompson as the head judge of the show. We had multiple different people that they would fly out of all these shows that I've been to. Even the international shows, I've been to India, I think 3 or 4 times for Shrew Classic. Always there'd be an American head judge. And I think the reason for that isn't to control the narrative, so to say. It's more of to keep the standard consistent. Because these guys, you want to get Phil Heath to India. If you let the local Indian judge, who may be fantastic, judge that show, he may very well be looking at something completely different and have a different standard in his mind than every other show we've ever been to. And he may look at these guys and say, I don't like any of these top 5 guys. I prefer this for whatever reason. I don't know. This is all speculation. Yeah. This is me. I'm just guessing on what could happen. But I know that the thought for international shows is they don't want it to be completely and totally, utterly different. So like if you want to get the top 10 Olympia competitors to a major show internationally, then these guys want to know that I'm being judged by people that have seen me before, not somebody that could go, oh, Phil Heath, I don't like him, or I don't know him. I rather have Big Ramy win because he's I like him. He's my countryman. I want him. Right? That is, by the way, personally, I can understand why people would like that uncertainty, but I can also understand if you're running the organization, you want some consistency in terms of the judging standards.
Yeah, you would hope that the judges that they do have doing this, that have been around for 10, 15 years, maybe not as long as Steve, would have the capability of by then knowing how to head judges.
I think they do.
Right. So, and that there's enough international flavor out there that they can come in and bring these people in. There's guys that have been around 20, there's guys that have been around as long as Steve that could be a head judge and have been judging internationally and could bring that different look and opinion to this.
I mean, just so you know, they have sent like Maz Ali, they've sent many other people. I don't have the names on the tip of my tongue of every person they've ever sent to head judge an international show, but there's been plenty of people that I've witnessed head judging international shows that aren't the people we mentioned. By the way, that being said, all this conversation, I don't have a problem, me personally, if you gave people, everybody else an opportunity to be the head judge of Olympia, Arnold. I don't think you're going to see inconsistencies. I think it's more about like honoring the past versus controlling the narrative.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. And so I kind of agree with that. So it'd just be nice to see, but is that going to happen? Probably not in the interim here. If you could change something, well, you never know. If you could improve the judging or maybe the scorecard system, transparency, the selection process, what would you want to implement there to change it up? Let's modernize. We're still doing the paper and pencil. The Olympics have automatic, boom, 2 seconds. The score is on the board.
I like that. I mean, that's one of the things that I think would be cool. And I'm like modernizing how the judging is done in terms of where at the end of the round, we see the score on a board. Obviously that could be very easily done at this point, where everybody has an iPad and the iPad translate to a score that's, considered and then placed on a board where we all see who's winning and how they're winning. I think that's very possible. I don't know the intricacies of how those decisions are made or at what point, but my guess is as Tyler Mannion continues to be the leader of the industry, continues to take over, I think you'll see more and more of that. You have seen that transparency we talked about earlier, where he breaks down the shows after. He is obviously keeps up with all of the newest technology, what's available in AI, what's available. I mean, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we see stuff like that being integrated in judging.
Okay, so there's a question. Do you think there could be a hybrid system where there's AI and real judges working together to take some of the bias or the opinionative portion out of it?
I would think that that's not only possible, but probable at some point in the future, using the pen and pencil and handing the scorecard down and having it tabulated by a person that's physically scoring and adding the ones together. I think that is certainly antiquated and will go away at some point or another in the near future. I think AI brings we talked, there was talk about this before, and I don't know if you remember when Gunter beat Ronnie in the pose down round.
Yeah.
I mean, it was exciting. It didn't work out the way anybody thought, but it was exciting. Yeah. I think that AI could be integrated in an interesting way, but ultimately, you'll eventually have to teach the AI. And if enough judging happens where, just like a large language model where enough data is loaded in, I would imagine that a large language model can be used for analyzing physiques based on all of the scores that it would be loaded in and all the bodies. If you take every picture that's on RX Muscle and the judging scores and you have enough information data loaded in, you would think that would be possible today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've done it. I've done it already with ChatGPT. I put in the photos at pre-judging and ChatGPT assesses it because there's no information about these competitors on the internet at this point. It's pre-judging, right? Just finished. Put it in immediately after the live stream is done. I put the photos in, it analyzes the photos and it spits out first, second, third. Here's why. And it's usually pretty accurate. It's gotten it based the same as the judges sometimes, and sometimes it picks a different winner than the judges.
What would be really cool is if you could do that, but we could load in the last 10 years of results. So as opposed to loading in, books or whatever, however they load in data into a large language model, you load in every result for the last 10 years and how it was scored. And then you say, use this and extrapolate it out and score the next shows. That would be interesting because then you're using actual judges that were IFBB pro judging.
Yes, but we don't want that. Because we don't know what happened. Maybe some shady. I'm not saying you do believe there's nothing shady. There could be some, and then it's taking the historic shadiness that might have happened in some of those results and then incorporating that into its thought process. We don't want that. We want it fresh and clean and just using the bodybuilding criteria, size, symmetry, shape, and proportion, conditioning, presentation, and utilizing that. And it's been able to do it already. And this is
I'd love to see the results. Are you posting those results?
Yeah, I've been doing it. It even did the show that Quentin got beat by that Sergey guy. And no one had Sergey. Like, we didn't know who he was. And so right after prejudging, I put Sergey and Quentin, and I said, who's picked first and second. This is after prejudging. There's been no results. It picked Sergey over Quentin. Sergey ended up beating and winning Quentin. That was his first pro show that he won.
I'm going to give you so this is a good idea for content for you to get you some clicks. You better do it fast before Nick Strength and Power watches. But I would figure out a way to speed up that process, put it into ChatGPT and create videos out of it, and then be the first one to out of the gate to give the AI analysis of the show and the breakdown, and then speak out the results.
I do that already. I've done that. Yeah. So good.
Does that get a lot of views?
It's okay. Some of them got okay, but I kind of stopped. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's cool to see what you don't know what it's going to spit out, and it's been pretty good. So it's interesting and something I can maybe get back into more. I did that for a little bit, but then I kind of stopped. But
I love the idea.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to see what it
especially if you can condense it down into a short video. So instead of doing like watching the breakdown with Chris Aceto and Dave Palumbo, if you could watch this in conjunction or even do it instead of it, you watch the AI version and the breakdown and why this guy should have placed this and how the symmetry round really gets broken down. How does the muscularity round really get broken down based on AI? It's interesting.
Yeah, I did. I was going to show you, but anyways, I'll send you one of the videos after the show to take a look at it. All right, so let's get into men's open bodybuilding. And the question I'm going to ask you, I want a real blunt, honest. I know you're going to give me an honest answer. Is men's open bodybuilding kind of dying, kind of fading away? There's only 45 open men's pro shows versus 95 classic physique open pro shows, 110 bikini shows. There's more fit model pro shows than there is men's open. Right.
So there's a reason for that for sure.
Okay.
One of the reasons is because you have to pay a sanction fee, and the sanction fee is much larger for open bodybuilding, and then the prize money is also much larger for open bodybuilding. So,
but do you think that's the only okay? But do you think that's the only reason why there's less?
I think that if you made it the same as a bikini show, you would have many more shows, more open bodybuilding shows. I think, though, one thing I will say that kind of coincides with your point is that because there's only so much genetic material available, right? So there's only so many men, period, interested in this sport. It's grown a lot. I mean, it's grown tremendously from the days that I got involved in the early 90s when I started watching bodybuilding. I was addicted to bodybuilding in 1993. That's all I cared about as a teenager. 13-year-old is, my Muscle Mag, my Flex, and my Muscular Development magazines, and then a few other ones that are also long gone, Planet Muscle and a few others. So Iron Man. So I love those magazines, and I was super into it. But in that group of people, it has certainly grown. But there's also all of these other divisions. So as a result, a lot of the genetically superior athletes are choosing not to go into the open bodybuilding for one reason or another. You could speculate that it's because of the fact that it's easier to do.
It's more appealing. It's more appealing. It's more marketable.
It's more appealing to girls, which 100% is true. When I show my girlfriend, bodybuilders that I thought were awesome, when I show her like a Paco Batista or like a Dave Palumbo in his prime at 300 plus pounds, she goes, ugh. She rose up a little in her mouth, right? She has no interest in that. When I showed, I remember when Dave Palumbo guest posed when I did one of my first bodybuilding shows, and he guest posed, and my mom was sitting with me after I competed. She said, "You want to look like that?" And I said, "Yeah," and she was horrified. Yeah. So even the aesthetic bodybuilders now, if I show them to normal people, they think it doesn't look real and it's silly. So you have the element of girls don't like it. It's not as appealing. Yeah. And then the element of obviously that the requirements are extreme. It's an extreme sport. So you can do men's physique or classic physique, although I think that's still pretty damn extreme these days. It's less risky a sport as you go smaller and smaller, or less and less dramatic, however you want to call it. So I think that's those combination of those three things, and the fact that it's much more expensive as a promoter. And if you want to make money, if you're spending an extra $100,000 or $200,000 to have an open men's bodybuilding show, it makes it much more difficult to make money. Okay. If I did a promoted show, I would 100% want it because I'd be more excited about it. I still love to go see the big guys. When I go to the Olympia, I won't even go to Friday. Yeah. I don't even care. I don't want to see the Friday. Not that I don't appreciate all the effort that the athletes put in, but if I have a limited amount of time, I'm going to see the big guys. Yeah. Which to a normal person would sound weird, but that's what I'm going to see.
Yeah. No, I agreed. I'm same as that. So then do you think the Manions, millions and millions of dollars a year they make, do you think it would be a good strategy to lower that sanction fee for the men's open division to build back the open division? Wouldn't that make a good business move on their part?
So I think is it a good business move? I'm not sure it's a good business move. I think it's a good move for fans of open men's bodybuilding to see the guys have more opportunities to compete. For business, in terms of the business of the organization, I don't know if it makes sense from a business perspective from them on their part. I'd have to really think about that. But from the fans' perspective, it would be a good thing because you would get a lot more shows. I think every promoter would rather have open men's bodybuilding than like a men's physique. I think if the price was the same, I don't think anybody would choose. I'd rather have men's physique over men's bodybuilding. I don't think so.
So then why is the sanction fee more for men's bodybuilding versus classic physique bikini?
Because it's a bigger draw. I mean, it's just supply and demand. They don't want. I think that it comes down to on their part a business decision. I think there's probably an element of the more shows that we have, the more diluted the competitors got, and that they're probably thinking. I mean, this is speculation once again, where I'm thinking like if you have 100 men's open pro shows, now the talent is dwindled down quite a bit, especially considering the talent isn't as good, in my opinion, as it used to be. Okay. So like I loved the bodybuilding era of the 90s and early 2000s. Yep. That's my golden era of bodybuilding. I think that it got diluted down in the late 90s, and now it's tough where I don't see anybody now that I'm looking at that is where they're overwhelmingly, where I'm like blown away by really anybody anymore. None of the guys that I look at and go, holy moly, this guy is so dominant. And I don't see, like, when somebody asked recently on one of the, on social media platforms, they said, who is the next Phil Heath? And I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I think we have a lot of fantastic bodybuilders, Andrew, Samson, a lot of these guys that I look at, and I would love to look like, you know, like I said, my girlfriend and my mom and every other woman in my life would be horrified if I looked like Samson. I would be very, very, very excited to look like Samson, Andrew, Derek, etc. Derek at 6'3", he would be, I would be 350 pounds.
Yeah.
But you know, it's tough.
Yeah, well, you skipped ahead to my next question. What do you think of the current crop of athletes? And so you're saying you prefer the athletes from the 90s and maybe early 2000s physiques, and I agree with that. What do you think has changed? The look?
I think it's other classes being available as options.
So less genetic pool being pushed into open. Yeah,
that's what I think. I think that you have guys in the men's physique division and the classic physique division that if there wasn't that opportunity and they just still decided to compete in the open. I mean, look at Brett Wilkins. Brett Wilkins was a men's physique competitor when he worked for me. He worked for me. Him and his wife both worked for me at one point. Yeah. And dude, this guy who was a kid then, this man now is incredibly impressive. He's humongous. Yeah. He has a lot of detail. If he would have stayed with men's physique division or even went to classic and stayed at classic, you wouldn't be seeing this freakazoid we see now, who's up and coming, who I think Brett Wilkins could be a Mr. Olympia. I think it's possible that he has the potential to do that. So, like, would he have ever been? No. Are there a lot of other Brett Wilkins type physiques in classic and men's physique? Hell yeah, I think there's a ton. I think there may be another 100 Brett Wilkins out there. I just don't think that those 100 guys have the desire or the willpower or the the interest. I just think the interest and desire is low, especially when you consider all that it takes for Brett Wilkins to go from 205 pounds on stage to 285 pounds on stage. I think that you're talking about a quantum leap in desire and motivation and discipline, and it's extremely hard. And the amount that you're putting on the line to get there is extremely high. So not only is the cost high, but the amount of discipline and willpower required to get there are incredible, are just huge. So like, what's the upside to doing that? Especially along the way where, like you said, the top guys are now making millions of dollars, which I think is justified. I'm excited for them. I think it's worth it. But if you're number 10 at the Olympia, you're making a few $100,000. If you're number 15 at the Olympia, you're making $100,000. So, $100,000 is nothing to sneeze at. But if you're number 15 in the world at ping pong, you're making more money than the guy 15 in Olympia.
Yeah. Does it upset you that men's open bodybuilding is kind of dying down in a sense of the caliber of athlete, the number of shows, the characters in the industry? They're not like the rivalries you used to have with Jay and Ronnie and Phil and Kai, and even back in the day, Lee Haney would go at people. Samir Bannout would be calling people out in the gym, and like there was more charisma, there was more of that. Now it seems like it's just kind of like it's kind of boring, and I have to cover this all the time, and I'm trying to come up with stories and storylines, and like, does it kind of upset you because you're a super fan? You went through every aspect of this, so you would know.
I don't know if it upsets me. I think that I am. I have graduated in a sense. From being a super fan to much more business oriented, and I have a lot of other things in my life these days that take up a lot of time and attention, where being upset is tough. I've also been through a lot where to say that I'm upset is tough. It's hard to upset me. That being said, I will say that I do like a storyline, and I even liked, and this is kind of, as they say these days, a hot take. I liked Martin Fitzwater's craziness. I liked it. And you know what? There was a temptation on my part to go sponsor him because I liked him being the bad guy. I liked all the drama and controversy. And I didn't reach out to him. I like him. We're friends online, or we follow each other. And I almost wanted to be like, fuck him. Because I liked the King Kamali story. I liked Craig Titus before he killed the girl and all that other crazy.
Yes.
But I liked that he was the party bad boy, that he did the crazy parties in Vegas. I liked all that shit.
That would have worked. I probably would have worked there. You probably, so much attention would have been brought to everything, and they would
loved it.
right?
I love Aaron Singerman sponsoring him. Talk about polarizing.
Yes.
I love that. And I thought, obviously that's not popular to say that because, you could very easily say it was disrespectful. But when Kai hit Phil with his hair, I was up there in the front row being like, ha, hell yeah. Did I want them to beat the shit out of each other? Probably a little part of me did.
Yeah.
And, a larger part of me didn't want that for the sport. I didn't want it to be unprofessional. But there was part of me that said, man, these two are literally, I know at that time, I went to the after party with Kai at XS in Vegas, and Phil was there. And I went up to say hi to Phil, and Phil told me, get the fuck away from my table. You're with him. You're on his team. And I secretly loved it. Awesome. And I was like, yes. I am on his team, motherfucker. I just think it's, I like that. I mean, I think there should be more, but that being said, I understand also how it can seem unprofessional. And, there's an element to that we require entertainment, that sports should be entertaining. And then a bodybuilding where everybody is just friends and professional, and everybody shakes hands, smiles, hits their shots, and then walks off stage. And then in interviews, they just say, I really think that I brought my best package, but Nick Walker also brought his best package. And at the end of the day, the best man won, and that's okay. I support him. We'll do our best next time. That's so like, come on, man. Let's get a little more interesting.
Good. And that's what's covered leading into my next question. What would you do? Aaron Singerman now owns the NPC, the Olympia, let's say, and we gotta refresh. Okay. We gotta make bodybuilding more entertaining again. Yeah. We gotta get it to the UFC level, or try and follow those footprints of what they've done. What would Aaron do? If you're in charge, you own the Olympia now, Aaron, what are you going to
do? I need to get all my people together. We need to do a big brainstorming session and start game planning that out, because I don't have on the top of my head a game plan for something that large and extraordinary. I think that's something that needs to be thought out. And, I'm friends with Dan Solomon for also 20 years, since he was doing Pro Bodybuilding Weekly with Bob Chikro. I've been friends with him that long. And I would tell you that me and him have talked about expos and being more experiential and like changing. You can't just walk up to Jay Cutler and take a Polaroid picture with him anymore, and he charges you $5. Yeah. Walk up and take a cell phone picture. The chance for me to go up and meet, let's say, Craig Tice at the first Olympia I went to, I had a chance to go up and stand in line and shook his hand and took a picture with him and have a conversation. That was so amazing. Now you have access to all the pro bodybuilders in real time. I can literally see what Samson Duda ate for dinner. He probably posted on his story. So the level of access is just so different now that we have to think of, the industry needs to think of, how do we make this more engaging and exciting for people going forward that aren't actually competing? Like, how do you get somebody who's never going to compete in Olympia, that has no hopes of that, doesn't even care, to stay interested in the actual competitions? Because people are watching the vlogs. They're more involved in the vlogs. They're not watching. So like, if you're a Chris Bumstead fan, you're waiting to see how he did at the show and watch the highlight video. You're not watching the rest of the show. So how do we get people more involved in the other parts of it? The answer is, I don't know. I would really have to sit down. I have a very creative team of people that I think I could get you the answers to that question. And I think that that is something that the Olympia people and the bodybuilding industry, and I think that Tyler Manion and the other people that are helping craft the future of this sport need to really consider, because it is something where, if you want everybody to be on their best behavior at all times, and you don't want to create any drama or any waves along the way, then you're going to have something like a very placid lake of bodybuilding, and a placid lake's not going to get a whole lot of attention. We got to have some waves in there somehow, in a way that works and doesn't make us look like a bunch of fools along the way, which I don't know. Do you have an idea? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I would. So I look at Dan Solomon, he's got the job of promoting the Olympia. He's the president of the Olympia. And I don't think there's a real marketing push. There's not a real marketing campaign of promoting the Olympia. What I see is tickets on sale now at the arena, get them now. And there's no storylines. Okay, this is the Super Bowl. You got Derek Lunsford versus Andrew Jack, Samson Dauda. Go send a crew, film a little series of them prepping for the Olympia. You got Samson talking about Derek, I got to make a comeback. I got 4th place last year. And this is serious. I'm trying, this is what I'm doing. This is the grind. Here's my routine. This is what I'm going through. The stress is posing. And then they go film Derek for 5 days. right? And they build these storylines
like the behind the scenes at UFC, like the UFC.
Yeah, come on, and then they have
Dan has done that before. He tried to do that before. I think that I like that idea, and he has done that before.
Yeah,
but it needs to be done on a larger level with a bigger budget. I agree with you. That would be really cool.
Yeah, just build the characters, right? And then you start getting rivalries and there's characters, and you put these IG clips up, and you lead into the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. But it's just like, hey, get your tickets now.
By the way, I would love that if they could do that with a good storyteller, and that you could craft those storylines, help craft the storylines when you go. So you remember Ben Pekulski in Generation Iron?
Yes,
he was the bad guy in Generation Iron, and he was like the evil genius. You had Kai Green, who was the protagonist. You had Phil Heath, which was the spoiled brat, and the champion. And then Kai was the people's champion. Yeah. And then you had Ben, who was the bad guy, who I loved that Ben was the bad guy. And I know Ben very well. Yeah. And Ben didn't get to finish. They didn't get to use all of Ben's content that was created for the movie because he became a less important character, because at the show, he wasn't willing to video because he was too focused. If you know Ben, when Ben's in game mode, he doesn't want to talk to anybody. He doesn't want his family didn't stay in his room with him. He was by himself, focused on the show. He was there to win. And so they didn't include a lot of his content then. But what I loved is they crafted this story, and they said, hey, Ben, you're the bad guy. Kai, you're the the people's champion. You know, when you're on the stage, you remember you're the people's champion. So they helped create in the heads of the competitors who was their character. So if Dan could do that again and had the budget to do it, I loved where that was going, where that video, where Generation Iron #1 went. And I think that could have been something that could have been put out, just like you're talking about, in parts for free on YouTube, that would have had millions and millions of views.
Yeah. It's a little bit of missed opportunity. You know, I get he's busy, you know, and maybe there's budget restrictions and he can only work with what he's got. And
it's not too late.
It's not too late. Maybe Dan will see this and we'll get some ideas, and
he's going to make it. I guarantee you, everybody we talked about is going to see it. That's for sure.
So, Dan, if you're listening, there's a story that can be built with these characters that you have that are getting ready for the Olympia. That'd be awesome. People would watch it. IG Reels, TikTok Reels, whatever. Get it out there, man. Leverage what you have. You're sitting on a gold mine there. All right, let's transition into your journey, your personal journey, what you've been through, rebuilding yourself after what you've been through. Now, we all know the journey of you coming up through, for the most part, coming up through our RX and doing what I'm doing basically back in the day, and doing interviews and meeting all these legends and talking to them, and then coming into building your brand and REDCON1. And but so you had the highs of the highs, but and people know about that, but let's talk about the lows. Okay. And what happened? You did go to prison. Absolutely. And you had to rebuild yourself. I'm
an open book. I'm happy to give you as much detail or as little as you want. And I'll start off with, I guess, the shorter version of how that all happened. And then you ask me the questions and I'll give you any additional detail you want. So the short version is, after RX Muscle, I had the opportunity to start a company called Blackstone Labs with my best friend and then future business partner, or now past business partner, PJ Braun. And the story there was essentially, I worked for a company called Iron Mag Labs. Do you remember them?
Yes, I do. They're still around. Still, what's his face? Christian.
Yeah.
What's his name? Yeah, Iron Addicts, Strength Addicts, or whatever. He's
Christian
Duke or Duke or something. Yeah,
Dookie or something like that. Yes. Yeah, I've known him. I've seen him around for quite some time. Robert DiMaggio is the owner of the brand. Yeah. And at the time, they were growing really fast. PJ and I was the marketing director. PJ became the main athlete. And along the way, at my wedding to Darielle Singerman in 2011, Robert DiMaggio came as my guest. And he told PJ and I that we had generated $200,000 in coupon code sales for the month. And it was a pivotal moment in our lives at the time, because we were both getting paid $4,000 a month. And so I knew we were making Iron Mag Labs popular. I didn't know we were generating that kind of money. And so he and I, as soon as Robert walked away, we were like, oh my God, we have to make more money. Like, this is crazy that he made $200,000, we made $8,000 put together, Yeah. So that was our first thought. was like, oh my God, this is like, we need to figure this out. So when an opportunity came around to take over several of the products, there was, at the time, it's called the Steroid Control Act, Designer Steroid Control Act of 2010. And he was concerned that it was going to pass. This was my wedding was in 2010, I suppose. That's right. I'm divorced now, so the wedding, I've removed all of that part of my, other than the 3 little boys, that part of my mind. Anyway, so Robert was concerned that it was going to pass. Richard Collins, the famous Rick Collins, the famous steroid attorney, said, it's as certain as death and taxes, this law will pass. Nobody's fighting it. Well, Robert gave us all of his super DMZ that was left, which was a pro hormone, and another one, another different pro hormone called Methaquat Extreme. He had 5,500 units of one, and I forget how many of the other one. And I pitched him and said, hey, let me and PJ sell it. If it becomes illegal, we'll destroy it. I didn't have any children at the time. PJ, obviously, he just had one son. So he didn't have any children. He wasn't married. We're like, you know what? We're willing to take the risk. He's not. We'll sell it. If it becomes illegal, the day that it becomes illegal, we'll destroy this and we'll stop selling it. Yeah. So we took it from him and we made the deal that we'll sell it. We'll get you all your money back, your cost of goods, and we'll split in 3 ways, whatever profit we can generate. And we sold all of this stuff in 6 weeks. I made 80,000. He made 80,000. PJ. We gave Robert 80,000. Plus we got him all of his money back, which is about 150,000. And so it was like, man, it was like manna from heaven. I never made $80,000. $80,000 is a good year's wages.
Yeah. Yep.
So like $80,000 to make in 6 weeks, it was just like the most incredible thing that ever happened in my life. Yep. And PJ was going to buy a Mercedes. And I remember calling him and being like, dude, we cannot spend this money. We need to take our money and we need to figure out a way to re-up. Yeah. We need to buy more. And so I called Robert and I pitched Robert on allowing us to buy more, because by then the law not only didn't pass, but didn't make it through the Senate, and the president didn't sign it into law. So they had to start all the way over again. So I said to Robert, look, you keep making whatever you want. We're going to create a new brand, a new entity to keep selling these 2 products if you're cool with it. And we will give you 33% of the company with this new company. And for no, you don't have to put any money in. You're going to own 33% just for allowing us to use your IP, your name of your products. Yep. And to keep making the products from the manufacturer that he had at the time. And so he said, okay, great. I keep owning Iron Mag Labs. I don't lose any percentage. You guys keep making your $4,000 a month to promote Iron Mag Labs. And because me and PJ weren't going to even promote, we owned Blackstone, which became Blackstone at the time. Yep. And that name, Blackstone Labs, I came up with it. Me, my ex-wife, and PJ were at the table on Sunbiz trying to register a company so we could start our own bank account. Yep. And we couldn't come up with a cool name. And I said, let's just come up with, I'm just going to make up 2 cool sounding words, Blackstone, and we'll type that in, because there's no real company being made. We're just going to sell these 2 products. Yeah. So it's like, who cares what the name of the company is? Why are we debating this and thinking about a cool name? It doesn't even matter. Yeah. So we came up with the word Blackstone, and we did labs like Iron Mag Labs, and the company was born. Yeah. And within a few months, we were doing so well selling these 2 products that me and PJ were personally making about $1,000 a day in profit of these products. And plus I made $4,000 a month from Iron Mag Labs. I made $12,000 a month from RX Muscle, because I made $4,000 a month in salary, and I made $8,000 a month in commission on advertising sales. Oh, okay. So I was making a lot of money. Yeah. And at the time, even spending that kind of money was like unthinkable. I didn't have anything to buy, so that I would ever spend the money on. So we were saving money on accident almost. So I told PJ we should come up with more products, and PJ came up with the name Angel Dust, which is our pre-workout, and that picked up. And then we started selling another pro hormone. And then we started selling another product, and a pump product, and another product, And before you know it, we had 10 products, 10 different SKUs, several different flavors of some of these products. And I'll always remember we were in the Bahamas with PJ's girlfriend at the time, Amber, my wife, and me, and we were in the Bahamas together, hanging out. And that day, that Friday, we both made $5,000 in profit for the day. So I made $5,000 and PJ made $5,000. We made $10,000 in profit in a single day at the Bahamas. And it was like, how did this even happen? To do 2 meatheads, that literally, PJ didn't graduate college. I didn't even go to college. And then we have this business that's generating money while we're on vacation. It was like such a foreign concept. And we hired our first employee to pack the orders. Before that, PJ packed all the orders himself. Okay. I was still traveling for RX Muscle everywhere. And then one day we ended up buying Robert out. Robert ended up being really angry at us because Blackstone started being more popular than Iron Mag Labs. He didn't like the idea of that. we had a big falling out with Robert. PJ and him went back and forth, and they butted heads. Robert was, a proud entrepreneur. PJ was a proud bodybuilder, and they didn't get along great for a bunch of time. And at one point, they had a big explosion, which I don't need to get into all the details, but it was an explosion. And I offered Robert to buy him out. And PJ and me took every penny that we had saved up, every penny. And we paid him every dollar that we had to buy him out. And then we paid him $8,000 a month for 3 years after that.
Wow. And
we bought him out. And as soon as we bought him out, it was like an amazing thing that we bought this guy out, but it also sucked because we had $0. Literally.
Yeah.
But we built the company back up through trials and tribulations. And in 2016, PJ and I had, like I said, this is the fast version. I could give a much slower version. But the fast version is we had a partnership dispute. PJ was doing a lot of drugs, drinking. He was in a very tumultuous relationship with his wife at the time, Celeste, who was the WWE Women's Champion. PJ, my old friend, became PJ somebody else. And I basically got kicked out of the company. PJ and our private equity investor, which I use that term lightly because he was basically like a shark who got into the company by us being meatheads and not knowing anything about business, just learning along the way.
Yeah.
And we allowed this guy in, and this guy and PJ got together. I think he convinced PJ in a time of weakness, because PJ was mentally weak at that time, particularly mentally weak because of all of those factors I mentioned. And PJ went with him instead of me. They kicked me out of the business. I ended up suing. I ended up being bought out of my shares of the business for a discount, but still bought out. And instead of doing a non-compete, I did a compete. I basically told them, so typically when you leave a business, you get bought out, you have to sign a non-compete for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, something like that in that industry. So you say, I'm not going to compete against my previous business. I told these guys I would take the money, but I wanted to compete. And PJ at the time, and I would say that PJ would regret, would easily, if you had him on, will tell you all of this is regret. He is a great guy now. He's back to the old PJ. The prison experience and the injustice that we both faced changes you. It changes people. And it changed him, and he lost a lot. I had REDCON this whole time. He only had Blackstone during the prison process, and then the prison time away, everything. He lost everything in that period of time, along with his ability to even work in the business, in this industry. So he's really lost everything. Yeah. And he's able to reflect. And so did I when I was in prison about things I would have done differently, or things that, everybody, you can't help but reflect because you have nothing but time. Yeah. And so I think PJ, it's safe to say that nothing I'm saying will come as a surprise or an insult to PJ, even though it may sound negative. He knows that this is the case, and we've since made up, and we're friends again. And I'm rooting for PJ, and I want nothing but good things for him. He deserves nothing but good things. Anyway, with that being said, I ended up leaving, and I signed a compete. So only PJ in the old PJ fashion of this time in PJ's life. He said, I don't give a fuck. Go ahead and try to compete. I said, go ahead. He goes, I'll sign it. And I said, sign it. And he signed it. And we were in UK for FIBO. Or we were in the UK for the Body Power show. We were for Body Power in 2016. And he signed to compete. And I was like, game on, motherfucker, let's go. And I started REDCON1 a few days after that. REDCON1 in 2016. By the middle July of 2016, we were doing $1 million a month in revenue. I was making way more money than I ever did at Blackstone in the first year. In the second year of REDCON, we did more than Blackstone did at its very best year. And then in the third year, we did more in revenue than Blackstone did in the history of Blackstone all put together. So we very quickly surpassed Blackstone. Like I said, we had $1 million a month in the first July of the business.
Jesus. Yeah.
So it was the perfect storm. It wasn't just me trying to prove something and feeling like, angry. It was also Dallas McCarver. It was the team we put together.
Yeah,
it was everything.
Yeah.
It was the name. It was this a confluence of amazing factors that created this success. In 2017, in March of 2017, when Blackstone was, all PJ, I had been gone for about a year by then. Blackstone Labs got raided by the FDA. And I heard all about it. People were talking about it in Boca. Members of the staff from Blackstone reached out to either members of my staff, because we were just down the road, or people drove by their office and saw FDA. I even had somebody tell me this FBI, and I was like, oh my God, FBI, that's worse. But it turned out being the FDA. And so I didn't know what had happened. And then when I talked to people that knew PJ very well, because I didn't speak to PJ at the time whatsoever, we were not in literally no communication. I thought it was about DMA, because they had DMA 1,3-dimethyl, which was a very popular stimulant in their Angel Dust Extreme product. And I thought maybe that's what it was about, because at the time we had already discontinued any pro hormones. We weren't making any of those products, or they weren't. It wasn't even me. We had long discontinued. We discontinued every pro hormone in December 2014, and then a few stayed till August of 2015. But by 2017 in March, this was all long over with. So PJ didn't know. They removed almost all of the products in the warehouse. They took everything. So he didn't know what they took, what the reason was. Nobody gave him any clarity. I contacted a criminal attorney because I was worried. The criminal attorney told me he called the FDA and was told that I wasn't a person of interest in the investigation. And I stopped worrying about it. I was like, okay, all good. Yeah, that's it. I don't have anything to do with these people. I'm not part of the business. I'm not an owner. I'm not making any money from it. I don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I was all good until 2019, when I was at a chiropractor and I got a call on the phone and I didn't answer it. And I got another call. And finally I was like, something's going on, because I must have got 20 calls in 10 minutes. And I called back my lawyer, who was my criminal attorney, because I was like, uh-oh, that's bad. All these other people calling me, but the criminal attorney I hadn't talked to in almost 2 years called me.
Yeah.
He goes, bad news, you got indicted by the federal government. And I said, for what? I said, for what? He goes, it's sealed. Nobody knows. And I said, well, when will we know? And he goes, tomorrow you have to turn yourself into court to be federally indicted, fingerprinted, etc., and they'll tell you then. And I'm like, holy shit. And so it was obviously very scary for me and my wife. My kids didn't know. They were really little at the time. I went in the next day, I got fingerprinted, and I got read off my charges. And the charges were very scary. There was 12 charges. There was everything from selling steroids to money laundering, wire fraud. I mean, it was like a whole list. And I was like, what is all this? Like, what is this for? What happened? And every time they read off a charge, they would say the max amount of time you can get in prison for these charges. And they'd say 10 years, 20 years, wire fraud, 20 years, money laundering, 20 years. And you read it off. And I'm like blown away, right? Because after it's over, I'm like, are they saying I could go to wait for prison for the rest of my life? And he's like, no, the charges would all run concurrently together. So you could get up to 20 years. And I'm like, that's still bad.
Yeah.
And we ended up going back to the lawyer's office, myself and my wife. And the lawyer told me, we essentially need to figure this out, start game planning, and we need to get a $200,000 retainer right away. And I said, okay, what are we going to do? What choice do I have? I paid the guy $200,000. And then for the next few years, I spent $6 million on a legal defense to prepare myself to go to trial. I ended up firing that initial attorney, hiring a all-star legal team, which includes the likes of Alan Dershowitz and many other very famous attorneys. And I prepared for a case. And my case was something very interesting. So I got a lot of very good lawyers, not just for the money, but because mine was a case of first impression. The Designer Steroid Control Act of 2014, which was enacted by President Obama in December, was never been tried against anybody else. So what I had was something called a case of first impression, which is incredibly rare, as you can imagine. Imagine being the first person tried for anything.
There's no precedent for it. There's no precedent.
Yeah, there's no precedent. Yeah. So the government is paying a lot of attention because they want to make sure they set that precedent. If you do X, Y, and Z, you go to prison for X, Y, and Z. And so for me, I was like, well, on my side, nobody else has ever been sentenced for anything like this. And so I went at this with every intention to fight the government, and that I knew that I would win. Because there's something called mens rea, which is intent. There must be intent to break the law. You can't go to prison for something with no intent. And I figured I could show with all this proof that I had, I'm not going to give you all the proof because it'll take so long. And also it's all in part of my book. So I have everything outlined and all this in way more detail in the book. But the intent was always, my intent was always to follow the law. It was never to break the law. Me and PJ never, ever intended to break the law. That was not part of the plan. Do we make pro hormones that actually worked? 100%. Were pro hormones, would I make pro hormones today? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Did we do everything we thought we could do to make those pro hormones without breaking the law? Yes. Did they hurt people and kill people? No. We didn't have one single person show up to trial to say that they were damaged or hurt by the product. I did not pay $1 for a person, an individual that was damaged by the product. What I did pay was $2.9 million in fines to the federal government, of which I have no idea what happened to that money. It was not distributed out to any bad people hurt, right? Who took pro hormones? You already know who took the pro hormones from Blackstone. Bodybuilders. On the website, it told you they're liver toxic. You can only take them for so long. Take PCT with it. Take a liver protectant. Don't drink alcohol with it. We were very specific. Who did we market to? You know, because you were one of them. Yeah, we marketed to who took Super DMZ? Me. I loved it. You know what I mean? I wish I had some now. So that's who sold and took the products. Ultimately, what it came down to at the end of the day was a math equation. I was told if I went to court and lost, I would get 10 to 15 years in prison. If I went and pled guilty, I would do 18 months or less. So it came down to 18 months or less, and 3 little boys who at the time were 3, 4, and 7. And I got out. They would be teenagers or older. So like, do I want to miss all the football games? Do I want to miss their first date, prom, their bar mitzvah, graduating high school? Do I want to miss do I want to miss the whole thing? Do I want to roll the dice on missing it all? The answer is no. And so in prison, there's 3 types of people. There's people who did it. There's certainly people who did it. There's people who pled guilty because they were scared, which was me. Plead guilty because you're scared of the repercussions, or you don't have the money to fight, which is there's even larger part that don't have the money. They just can't spend the money to fight. I mean, how many people have $6 million cash to fight a legal defense? Very, very few people. And then finally, there's people that didn't do anything wrong that do fight, and then they get smashed over the head by the legal system because they felt like, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to fight. But when you fight and lose, the penalty is way bigger than if you just plead guilty. It's not even close. Sometimes 10 times bigger to fight and lose. So those are the types of people. Like I said, there's plenty of people that did something wrong. I was in a minimum security camp for most of the time. The first 100 days was absolutely horrible because it was during COVID. And my judge did not allow me to turn myself in. I was, same with PJ, same with everybody. James Bacuzzi, our sales guy, went to prison. Same with Anthony Ventrella, who was a manufacturing partner who went to prison. We were not allowed to turn ourselves in because our judge doesn't believe in it. We got remanded into custody, which means you go to county jail for a few weeks, and then you go to a federal holding facility for, in my case, 3 months. And then from there, you take either Con Air, just like the movie, where they seatbelt you in and they fly you off with a bunch of convicted felons on their way to prison, or you take the bus, which they call diesel therapy, which was very, very fun. Just kidding. And that's what I did. The worst 20 hours of my life, probably. Wow. You're shackled with your hands, feet around your waist to your bus seat, and you are stuck next to another man in a school bus, and you really can't get up. And it's bad. And the federal holding facility, I was there for COVID lockdown. For my first 11 days, there was a fight in Beaumont, Texas. If people care, they can Google it. It's a thing that everybody knows about. There was a black hand that killed an MS-13 gang member in Beaumont. And as a result of that gang violence, they shut down all federal prisons, including mine. And I was stuck behind a door for 11 days without toilet paper, without a shower, without a toothbrush, without a change of clothes, only food that they could put through the door. And it was quite a humbling experience to go from the CEO of REDCON and all of the luxuries that provides in life to being without toilet paper in a cell with another man for 11 days. You can imagine. Yeah. So like you think about how helpless you are and how you have no ability to call your family or to check in or anything. And then I went to the prison camp, which was not that bad. It was very, very boring. And then I got out. And getting out was also a culture shock where you go from federal prison, even though it was a camp. I mean, you don't have liberties to do anything you want, whenever you want by any stretch of imagination. I got out of federal prison. I had 10 of my best, closest friends and my children come pick me up with 2 Suburbans. We went back to my private jet and we flew back to Boca Raton. I switched clothes from federal prisoner garb back into my normal clothes. And we had caviar chips and vodka on the way home. And when I landed, I felt like I went through a time warp and I was back in this whole other person's life. I got back to my house with my wife and my kids, and my wife immediately left. And I was with my kids, and I quickly realized I'm going to be getting divorced soon. And I dealt with a whole other series of drama. Obviously, I felt very lucky to be out of prison and be with my children, but life didn't get a whole lot simpler. and obviously there's more obstacles from there to now. I mean, life doesn't, like, there's ups and downs, like you said in the beginning. And this was certainly a down, but I will tell you that, interestingly enough, in my life, when I look back at the downs, they always bring tremendous ups. So it's all about opportunity and believing that you have an opportunity, and that no matter how bad things seem at the time, they will get better. They will get worse again too. It's just a matter of how you perceive it. And if you're looking for that next opportunity, and then making sure that for the bad times in life, which you will have, that you try to move through it with a positive attitude. And then for the good times in life, you enjoy it. You soak in the minutes, hopefully hours, and you bask in those positive moments.
Yeah, I learned a few new things out of that. That the 11 days behind the where you were in, whatever lockdown you were in. How did you wipe your ass? I want to know what did you do?
You use your uniform.
Okay, and then but the uniform's in there. Did they swap out
uniform? You can use papers out of a book. If you have a book or newspaper or any magazines, you can use, really the real thing is you have a second uniform, and you pick the part that you care about the least on your second uniform, and you use that.
And it just sat inside the cell there, or whatever, the room.
No, you have a toilet, and your so if you can imagine, it's 10 by 8 feet. I'm sorry, 12 by 10, I think. It's a federal holding facility, Miami. Okay. And it's well known because it's they call it the building, and it's just straight up. I was in I forget my floor in my section I was in now. 12G? No, that's not right. Anyway, I was towards the top of the building, and you have 110 people or so in your pod. You have 2 people in the cell. There's 2 floors, and usually there's a recreational area where where people do push-ups, and there's steel tables.
I've seen this before, yeah.
But you can't. But when you're in lockdown, they don't let you out of your little cell. So inside the cell, there's 2 bunks, with one on top of each other. I had the good fortune of being on the bottom bunk, which is better, especially if you're locked down. So in there, you have a small little area where you could do push-ups. And then on the far wall, there's a metal toilet, sink, and mirror that's all one. And so you would use the bathroom, and then, if you have a polite cellie, then when you're using the bathroom doing number 2, the cellie will face the wall or face the window and look away while you have to do number 2. And the door is solid steel. There is a small up and down window that, if you are positioned well during lockdown, you might be able to see a TV far in the distance, a small TV. And if you're lucky enough to have headphones, you can tune into a AM channel to listen to, AM or FM channel to listen to TV. We did not have either because we were both new. So we were stuck in there. And then for most of the time, we had no books, no newspaper, nothing. Eventually, I was fortunate enough to have family to ship in books. And I had a good cellie, which is very important. It was really, really sucky. I mean, it's about as sucky as you can imagine. And we were locked in there for quite some time. And then I was there even longer before I got moved to the general population on a lower floor, where it's people who are there for much longer. Because when you are on the higher floors, you're there locked in every hour of the day except for 2. So usually you get 2 hours out a day. They do 22 down, 2 up. And on the 2 hours you're up, assuming the door's open, which it wasn't for those initial 11 days during the gang violence or after the gang violence. You can go out. You can use the phone to call your family. You're allowed 2 calls while you're out. You can take a shower if you have time, which you don't unless you're in general population. People can play cards, play chess. There's usually a book cart on the general population floors. On this floor, or any of the floors towards the top, you only have a chance to use the phone, check your emails. There's no web browser, but there is a very old school email platform where you can send and receive emails. And there's also a law library that, if you had time, you could use this system to log in. Well, imagine like a DOS, like old school before Windows operating system. So you'd be able to do those things. Most people would rush to make a call, rush to shower, and then basically check their email, and they only have a few minutes left. They'll go and use the phone one more time and then go into the cell. So it's pretty isolating.
When you were how long were you in prison? Or
11 months.
11 months. When you're there, you're an entrepreneur, your brain is always racing. What were you envisioning? What were you planning? Were you strategizing with this time you have? when I get out, I'm gonna fucking do this. I'm gonna build this up. I gotta do.
I would have been. It's funny. People ask. I have people ask that, and I have people ask another thing. Let's say, did you feel horrible coming off testosterone and all the other? You know, at the time before this, for the first time in my whole life, I was taking an antidepressant. I was taking, because I was depressed going to prison. By the end, I knew I was going. I was taking Xanax at night to sleep. I was drinking alcohol in excess. So a lot of people say, you know, how did you feel? I didn't feel shit. So I was so in that first 100 days, I was so overwhelmed by the experience of 2 weeks in county jail and just trying to feel like, how do I survive for these 2 weeks? And then going into that first 11-day lockdown period and then running to the phones, I didn't think about a whole lot. And then when I did think, I was reading books. I'm a big reader anyway. I've been a huge reader my entire life. So it gave me an opportunity to read a lot of business books and read a lot of fiction. And I used that to escape my surroundings as much as humanly possible. So I would read until the book hit me in the face to fall asleep. Then I would take a nap if it wasn't nighttime. And then I would do the same thing again. Once I got into camp, I had more time to think. And I started writing my book about my life and my experiences I'd had so far and about the trial process. And I've always been interested in writing. I've always felt like I would be a good writer because I've been such a big reader. But I never really tried to do it. And then I started doing it. And I started thinking, you know what, I'm pretty good at this. And then, my cell I had at the Pensacola prison camp, FPC Pensacola, I had 3 other guys in my cell with me because it was a 12-man cell and we had 4 guys in the cell. And so I asked the guys, would you be all right if one night when we didn't do, after count at 9 o'clock, you're not allowed out. So we're stuck. I said, would you guys mind if I read a chapter of my book to you? And I figured like, this is a good kind of litmus test. Is this good? Or do I just think I'm good? Yeah. And I read it and they loved it. They loved it. They like absolutely loved it. And I think part of it was because they're bored, but part of it was like, it was genuinely interesting. And then I read the second chapter. I worked on the first and I wrote the second one pretty fast because I was like, that was fun. I want to read it again. And then they started telling other people in the cell block that I was writing my story. And I had more people ask to hear it. And then more people and more people and more people until I would have 2 sessions of about 30 people in my cell where they'd sit on the beds and they would all listen. And it was like, I'm entertaining the group of people, but they were doing a bigger favor for me because they would laugh. Sometimes they would cry. I mean, they would clap. And I'm like, wow, like, this is so cool. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my time was spent writing the book, editing the book, and then reading, literally performing the book where I'd read it and, my voice, I'd read it and people would love it. And so it really motivated me to think a lot about the book while I was there. And all of my former inmates who are friends that were part of that are always ask me, when is it coming out? And that they loved it and they encouraged me to ask a lot of questions. And a lot of people from prison to this day follow me or that I know personally and we've kept up with, because they felt engaged in my story, because they heard it. They heard it. So I think I thought about business. I thought about family. I thought about my kids a lot. I thought about REDCON. I had the good fortune of owning a private jet that had the REDCON staff and my kids and my family visit me. My wife did not visit a lot, only a few times, my ex-wife. But my kids came a bunch, not as much as I wish they came, but they came a bunch. My staff came every weekend. So I had at least 3 or 4 staff, sometimes as much as 12 that would come in a weekend to visit and give me updates on the business during visiting hours. Okay. And so I thought about it a lot, but I will tell you, I tried not to think about things I couldn't control as much as I could. Because when you're in prison, you can't run the business. No matter how much you talk to your employees, you can't run the business. I can't control my ex-wife. I couldn't control things that were happening that were not physically there in front of me. And even then, it's prison. You still can't control anything, right? Yeah. So I did my best to focus on the things I could control, which was what I was consuming in terms of reading. I didn't really watch TV. I really didn't watch movies except for, on the weekends. They have 2 TV rooms in prison. There's the Spanish TV room and the black TV room. The Spanish TV room, mostly on the weekends, watched movies in Spanish or porn. I wasn't going to watch porn and I didn't speak Spanish. Yeah. So I hung out with all the black guys on the weekends because they would put fire sticks in the TV and they would have movies I preferred and I could understand. So I would watch movies on the weekends on occasion, but other than that, I mostly read books or wrote. And then when I did think about business, a lot of times there's not a lot you can do with it.
Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering what your thought, your mindset was in when you were in there. So that's cool that the whole writing the book and reading to your inmates with you and getting feedback is pretty cool. I would have never thought that's what would have happened, but that's pretty cool. And it got you through it as well.
It was cool and it was fun. I'm glad I have those memories, and it's in the book that I wrote about that in detail in the book because it was a big part of being in prison. One of my favorite parts of a bad event.
Yeah. No, you did mention. Just a quick question about PJ. You said you're friends with him now. Like, do you speak to him, or is it?
PJ and me haven't had a chance to catch up in person yet. Okay. Yes, I'm rooting for him. I see him on social media. We talk on social media, and I think that he is somebody that's due some really good luck. He has always been a good guy, a good person, had a good heart. I think he had some tough times that, unfortunately, due to the situation, some bad decisions were made, which I can relate to, certainly. I mean, I've done my share of recreational drugs back in the day, and I made my share of bad decisions. And I'm sure I hurt friends and made decisions that if I go back to them today, I could say I would change things. I think that he would tell you that he would change the way he behaved in some situations. In some situations, he was a fantastic friend. We were very, very close. He's the closest thing I've ever had to a brother. So.
Yeah. Okay. Just kind of moving forward with the supplement industry. Obviously, that's what your expertise is in now. The future of sports supplement, bodybuilding supplement industry. What's new? What's next? Like, do you think it's oversaturated, the bodybuilding supplement industry? Where do you put yourself? Where do you put REDCON1 in the mix of all these brands? Why you've been able to last as long as you have so far?
Sure. Yeah, we're 10 years. We've had just had our 10-year anniversary, which is crazy. We went from the new hot thing, the new coolest brand, to a legacy brand. I had at the last Olympia, I had somebody come and say that I'm a legend. And I said, it was incredibly flattering, but I also thought to myself, I don't feel like a legend. I feel like I still feel like a new guy into the whole thing. I still feel like I'm trying to
10 years. 10 years isn't that long. Like 10 years is 10 years, but it's not.
No,
it goes by quick.
No. And I don't think they were saying. I don't think maybe they were saying that he was a young dude. So maybe to him, Total War was before he was in high school. I don't know. But whatever that may be, 10 years is now in our industry. A 10-year-old supplement company doesn't really exist. There aren't a lot.
No. Yeah.
You're in pretty hallowed ground when you make it to 10 years. We're also still doing 100 million or more in revenue. So you say 100 million or more in revenue in 10 years, that's very few. I mean, even the big boys of back in the day when I was doing it, they're almost exclusively gone. You still have Dymatize, obviously. Optimum is a monster. Ghost started the same time as us. They have obviously far surpassed us with the energy drinks and selling for billions.
SciTech is in there, BSN still around.
But we're way bigger than BSN. They're not even, they're shrunken completely. Comparatively, they've shrunken significantly. But you're right, there's only a few. Like if you name them, there's a few. So I would say it is very saturated. It's a very low barrier to entry business. So you don't need a ton of money or a ton of expertise to give it a shot.
I gotta say Mutant too. I gotta make sure I don't miss Mutant because there's Jim.
Mutant, of course, no Mutant. Mutant is still probably doing 100 million. I bet.
Yes.
They're big. They're big, and they've been around. I think even longer than Reg.
Yes, over 16 years. Over
16. Yeah, they've been. I think they can't started around when Blackstone did. So it was like way back. Maybe even longer than that. I don't even know.
I think PBL Mutant PBL started 2006 is when Jim.
No, they're older. No, they've been.
No, I know he's older than that, but Mutant, like the brand Mutant.
Oh, the brand Mutant.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. No, Mutant's older than us. Significantly older than us. Significantly older than Blackstone. Yeah. So I mean, there's not a lot of mutants. I mean, now you're really going to hell ground before Mutant. Who exists from before Mutant other than Optimum, Dymatize?
Optimum.
There's not. That may be it. I mean, I don't know what Muscle Tech status is.
Yeah, Muscle Tech is, well, they're not in insolvency, but they're going through something. I think they're up for sale. Yeah.
So anyway, yes, there's a lot of brands now. There's new brands all the time. They're always coming up. And to be honest with you, it's a commodity game. I mean, REDCON1 products are products that are popular, like Total War is popular because it's REDCON1. It's not popular because there's something unique and different about Total War that you couldn't make. I mean, you could create muscle discord supplements today and literally copy everything about Total War, exactly, with to the T, even formula, flavor, everything. You could do your own. You have to do a unique branding. You couldn't use the name, but other than that, you could use almost everything. So it becomes, it's like, why does my ex-wife like Chanel purses versus, Old Navy? It's because it's Chanel, so she likes it. And that's why it sells for $5,000 instead of $50,000.
Yeah.
So it's about being premium. It's about creating a brand, and that's very difficult. Creating an actual brand, like physically creating a brand, is so easy. Anybody can do it. All you need is 30, 40 grand. Somebody will make you a brand. Yeah. But to make a successful brand, you need a lot more than that. So it is a saturated business. It is a commoditized business. You have to be creative. You have to market creatively. I think the business of supplements will become even more so because a lot of the types of products have gone to the wayside. When REDCON1 started, we had a lot of muscle builders. We had testosterone builders. We had fat burners, powdered fat burners. We had non-stim fat burners. We had non-stim pump formulas. We had a lot of things that don't exist anymore. What do people take now? They take GLP-1s. They take TRT. They take growth hormone releasing peptides. They take peptides in general. They take growth hormone in general. So like that, what was popular in terms of supplements and that are higher margin are gone. Yeah. So now it becomes, what do people need that take those? They need protein. Protein is popular. And then it comes to, what do you drink? There's energy drinks. There's Shameless Plug. There's Jolt Cola, right? Yes. There's products like that, but it's still just caffeine and cola flavor. There's nothing unique. We have nootropics and prebiotics and stuff in here, but I mean, ultimately, there's not a whole lot that other than the flavor that you're going to go, wow, I love Jolt Cola, other than the brand. And that just gets worse, I think, with time. So it's delivery system, and then it's branding. And then otherwise, there's not a lot else to do. So the supplement side, I think, it becomes more and more difficult, more and more saturated. And the future of supplements is probably stuff that I can't predict other than the delivery system and convenience factor. And then the ability to distribute and get your products everywhere. And then to do good marketing where you build a brand or build a community around the brand. It's tough. It's a tough space. I think the biggest growth we're seeing now is in the peptide and telemedicine space. I was going to
say, are you involved in it? Are you getting into peptides or?
You never know.
Okay.
No.
It's tough. It's tough. You don't want to go down that road again.
Well, I would never, I'll tell you this. I would never do or make Chinese based non-prescribed peptides personally. Not because I have a problem with them necessarily, but because I wouldn't risk ever having an issue again with the law. And interestingly enough, it's funny. I found one of the things I learned from the Blackstone REDCON experience was with Blackstone, I felt like when I was there, I felt like we had to be cutting edge. I felt like our advantage was to play on the edge. I didn't want to ever go over the edge, but I always thought, like, if we're close to the edge, that's where bodybuilders are anyway, right? That's who we wanted to appeal to. It turned out that by playing much more in the middle, I became significantly more successful because I was able to use my brain and I was able to use my marketing acumen, business acumen to create success without going close to the edge. Because if you're playing close to the edge, there's a limited amount of money you can bring in. But if you're successful in the middle, it's almost unlimited. So I would never do anything ever again where I felt like I'm cutting close to the edge to make my money for many reasons. Yeah.
Okay. What's your 5-year goal then? Like, are you ever thinking like, you know what? I've made millions of dollars now. I have a company that's valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. Why not just sell it and take that money and do something else? You know, like, does that ever cross your mind, or like, are you a lifer for this? You're going to be 75 years old still doing
everything's for sale. Everything's for sale. If I had the right offer come around, then I would be lying to you to tell you that I wouldn't, even though this is my baby and I love it forever. Yes. If somebody came around and made the right offer, I'd be crazy to go, no, I'm never selling. I don't envision my 3 sons working for REDCON1 one day. I don't envision that. They love, especially my littlest one loves bodybuilding, Elijah, but he's not saying, I want to be the CEO of REDCON1 in 15 years or 20 years or whatever. Yeah. I think that my time in the world of nutritional supplements is finite. I don't think I'll be doing this forever. I have a lot of other business interests, even though we don't talk about them a lot. I have a lot of other things I'm very interested in that can make more money. And also you have to stay passionate about what you're doing and be excited about it. One of the biggest, I think, keys to my success in sports supplements is I love bodybuilding. And as you get older, I'm 46 years old now. My kids are getting older. My focus has shifted a lot personally from having the biggest muscles to longevity, wellness, anti-aging. And those things don't necessarily coincide with the businesses that I'm even interested in. And so I happen to have built quite a network of other business people and successful entrepreneurs, and also from very wealthy individuals. And so I have a lot of opportunities that have come my way post-prison that I would absolutely pursue. If I had hundreds of millions of dollars, it'd be very easy to be successful, I think, in a lot of things.
I think you would be good at doing like what Grant Cardone does. He's kind of like the speaker. He's out there.
I know Grant.
You could be like I think that would be something if you did do something in the future, kind of along
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's a good, that's a positive comparison. I'll take that as a compliment for sure.
Yes.
He's good.
Yes, very successful. Before we wrap up, we're almost done here. I know we're getting to the long one, but there's a lot to be said. Okay. Bodybuilding media. Okay, that's your bread and butter. That's where you came from. So who better to ask what the current state of our bodybuilding media is? You can say something about me too, maybe what I'm doing. But of all the podcasts and the media outlets in bodybuilding, what do you think of it? What's your take on what's happening? You got the Nick Strength and Powers, you got myself, you got Ivan Bodybuilding, you got even little Fozzy Fitness. I don't know if you know Fozzy Fitness. He's like the daily multiple every day. This guy's crazy how quick he is. You got Cutler Cast, you have the Menace podcast, you got some new ones out there as well. Like, what's your thought process? Because you did this for a long time.
Yes, I did do it for a long time. Yeah. I think a lot of it comes back to what we said about making bodybuilding interesting and having storylines. That it makes it difficult for you guys. The less storylines you have to cover, it makes it more difficult. And obviously, when we talked about like open bodybuilding being watering down to some degree by the other classes in terms of genetic material, there's less big, exciting people that we're going to follow for that reason too. That being said, I don't even know if that's 100% true, because if you look at the following on a lot of these guys that I barely know, I don't know anything about necessarily, they have tremendous followings.
Yeah.
I mean, seems like everybody wants to hear what Nick Walker thinks about his spaghetti meal or the newest movie or Who's Got Talent or whatever, the reality show he likes. Like I personally would be like, why would anybody care what Nick Walker? But people do. People care. Yeah, people absolutely care. So like they're putting out a lot of content and people have these crazy followings. So there's got to be a lot of people interested. I think it's just a matter of creating new, interesting content based on this. And then one of the things you guys have that's a huge advantage now that you could be responsible for is helping these guys create the storylines and ask the interesting questions. Because when I started in bodybuilding, everybody had a Weider contract. Nobody could speak to me. I mean, nobody.
Okay.
I mean, like I knew Jay as a friend for many years before I could ever interview him because he had a Weider contract. Couldn't talk to him. There's a lot of the guys I've never interviewed on camera. Phil Heath, I don't think, because he always had a Weider contract. He couldn't talk to me. And then obviously, then you had contracts with Steve Bleckman, and then Steve Bleckman wouldn't allow them to talk because Weider didn't allow him to talk, and it became this whole thing where nobody could talk to nobody. And me and Dave would talk to the fourth place winner because he's the only one that could talk, at the show.
Yeah.
So you do have the ability to access everybody now, which is cool to some degree or another, right?
Yep.
And there's all these fitness influencers, which didn't really exist before. I don't know. Maybe it's you guys' responsibility to create the drama, with the bodybuilders. I mean, I know we talked all kinds about the powers that be, but can we create drama between the athletes like Bob Chick did back in the old days at the what was it, Meet the Olympians?
Yeah, I see that, and I think I kind of maybe do a little bit of that. I think I'm more kind of on the controversial side and some of the things, my opinions on things, but versus what others would want to do. What do you think about RX Muscle? What's happening there? Like, it's still kicking around. There's
not a whole lot happening there. What's happening there?
No, it's just still stuck at the same amount of subscribers. They're kind of they don't really gain a lot there. And that's your old stomping grounds, and
it's been a long stomping grounds. Me and Dave didn't talk for years and years and years. And then when I was in prison, I saw some of the videos when I got out that Dave did, and I was very unhappy with Dave. Very, very unhappy. I did not like the videos that he put out. I didn't like them. So I told him I didn't like him, and he ended up deleting him. And then we ended up becoming friends again and talking again. And, I think that Dave is an incredibly smart guy. I think that Dave and Arcs Muscle, back when I was there, I told Dave, don't put all these videos on a server, on a private server, put them on YouTube. He did not believe me. We spent a tremendous amount of money on bandwidth for a private server for, I'm not exaggerating, tens of thousands of videos. So if you want to see the overall bikini champion from the 2012 NPC Nationals, you can't see it. If you want to see me interview, I don't know, whatever, the Bikini Olympia for the first bikini ever, I interviewed her backstage. You can't see it. It was on a server, and Dave never transferred them to YouTube. So it would have been better if Dave would have put everything on YouTube, because there would be such a historical, catalog of all these videos. And then the other thing was that one of the things I told Dave in the very beginning that I wish Dave would have done more of in the beginning, now it's tougher, is Dave was always the anabolic freak to me from MD. I loved those articles in the early 2000s. I would die to see what Dave said about steroids, because he was, in my opinion, he was the world's foremost expert at the time. And maybe he still is. I don't even know. I mean, I don't know who's doing that now, who's the expert. But Dave had the ability to do so much content that was educational versus us traveling the world, interviewing the third place competitor at the Tony Doherty Australia show. We would go interview these people, whereas Dave had this incredible amount of knowledge that people wanted. Because when we go to the Australian Grand Prix, we would stay there for a month, and we would go from place to place all over Australia doing seminars for 20 people that would pay $500 a person for a 2-day. But I would tell Dave, why aren't you putting this on YouTube? Like, you're going to get so popular. And it was a very analog belief. And so Dave has always had kind of old school beliefs, and I think he still does. So if he were to get with it a little bit and have somebody that was really smart and young, helping him with social media and TikTok, he could still do that. He has the ability in front of the camera, and he has the brain power to do it. He just doesn't know shit about anything. Like, honestly, Dave doesn't know shit about being cool, period. Like, that's never been his thing. He's been smart. He's been big, that's for sure. So he needs somebody who could help him be cool. But if he got the right person to be cool, Dave still has the ability to reach the masses.
Yeah, he's knowledgeable. He's very smart and knows everything about every product ingredient. It's crazy, the knowledge he has there. But maybe he's not leveraging it. But that's his thing to worry about. Before we wrap it up, I didn't have this question, but just talk a little bit about the bodybuilders a little bit, like Nick Walker. Okay, he's one of the most popular bodybuilders in the world right now. And I don't know if you're paying attention to what he's doing right now with his staying super shredded lean. He hasn't decided what show. He's saying he doesn't even know he's going to compete this year. Do you think he's trolling us? Like, you have experience. You can kind of tell what these guys are doing. Do you think he's just trolling us, not saying?
I'm sure. If he's staying shredded, and
super shredded,
he always seems pretty lean to me. From the stuff I see, he's probably going to compete again. I mean, is he pretending he's not going to compete at the Olympia? He's not doing anything?
Yeah, he's like, people interview him as like, so are you going to do a show this year? He's like, no, I don't know. I say, I might do the Olympia. I don't know this year. I'm like, Dick, this is what you do. Is you've said you wanted to do for so long. You missed 2 Olympias, and now finally you're back. You look great. You did the Arnold. You could have won that against Andrew. Whatever happened. And now you're just like, I don't know.
He seems like a guy who doesn't thrive on the pressure. He seems like a guy who gets overwhelmed by a lot of people's expectations. So it might be a personality thing where he goes, you know what, I'm going to do better if I could stay quiet, stay in the shadows, and then show up tremendous and shock people. I wouldn't be surprised. I am not a Nick Walker expert. I can't pretend to be. But it wouldn't surprise me if that's what he was doing. It would surprise me if he doesn't compete at the Olympia, especially with all the fans, the people excited. This is his job. This is what he does. I don't believe, other than creating content, I don't think he's somebody who's doing anything other than this, right? So I would expect that he will be at the Olympia with everybody else, and I'm sure he'll do very well.
Okay. And then who's your pick for the 2026 Mr. Olympia? We're about 15 weeks out. Are you favoring anyone to go?
Well, I would only, if it's me personally picking, I would only choose, first off, I think Derek is tremendous. But I think that my personal guess, if I were going to pick who I think as of today, I think that Samson will win. That's my personal pick as of today. I also think Andrew, obviously, I mean, I can't help it. I favor the taller guys, and that's why, like, you know, I feel like as a judge, see, I would be biased to some degree, where I have picked a hottie to win. I've never personally thought, like, I thought hottie would be Mr. Olympia. It's happened for me. And maybe that's personal biases where I go, this is just me. I'd rather have the Mr. Olympia be somebody that I can relate to more. I could relate to somebody tall. You know, I can't relate to the size of these dudes. I've never been anywhere remotely close to that, but I look at them and I go, man, I would love to look like those guys. I don't look at a hottie or even Derek, who has a beautiful physique. I don't look at him and say, I want to look like this. Because like I said, I'd be 375 pounds. I'd be humongous. Even though that being said, Samson is damn near 375 pounds, isn't he?
Do you think it's a good strategy, him getting that heavy, 350 pounds in the off season and have to compete?
I don't know. He's got to be among the most lean 350 pounders of all time, right? I mean, it's not like he's a big balloon. I mean, I remember Lee Priest would get to 300 pounds, but he'd be a butterball. I mean, he'd be disgusting. I mean, he would literally lose like 30% of his body weight to compete, or more than that. So I think that Samson, it's harder for me to say, because I think when you have to lose a tremendous amount of physical weight, a percentage of your body weight, it's very tough on your body, and it's tough to look tight and crisp when you've lost so much weight. So it's hard to say, but I think that if he stayed like around 300, 310, 315, he's basically in contest shape. You know, he holds water. So once you remove the water, he's not far away. He's just percentage of stage weight. It's like a very tiny amount. You're talking about, if he was 315, he's, you know, what, 15, 20 pounds away before cutting water. That's very little.
Okay, so Samson's your pick. I'm probably rooting for Samson or Andrew as well for that. All right, so before we wrap it up, what do you want to be remembered for? We all get to kind of build our legacies. What's Aaron going to be remembered for when you're no longer around on this planet?
I hope that I'm remembered. Look, most importantly is by the kids, right? By my kids. I have 3 boys. I wouldn't be surprised at all if I have more children. So that's the most important thing. My family is my most important thing. My children, my immediate family, then my extended family, by my employees. I hope that they remember me for the good things I did, the good deeds, the people I've helped out. I've made a point in my life to help people as best I can with the resources I have. I'm with my friends. I think I'm very generous, not just with money and stuff and possessions, but with as best I can with advice and support. When somebody that's my friend needs me, I think it's safe to say, I believe I'm always there. So I think that as a friend, I hope that I'm remembered very positively like that. And I honestly, you know, without sounding like grandiose in some way, I hope that I make an impact, a positive impact on the world. And we talked a little bit about the book. The book is going to be coming out in the very near future. And I like to believe that my story is a story of tremendous adversity, but overcoming it against all odds. And I think that when you do that, when you are able to do that and document it on the level that I have, where it's not just stories, this is all stuff backed by real life events and records that I have that'll be part of the book. I think that, or I hope that people read this book that aren't in bodybuilding. I mean, I'd love for the bodybuilding community to read the book, but I hope that people at large read the book, take something from it, and are able to use this business advice or just life advice, or, you know, just a cautionary tale for my life, and use some of the mistakes that I've made to make better choices in their life. I hope that's what comes from it. And I think that I believe that's what will happen. So that's my hope and goal, that I leave the world a better place than I left it in some sort of way.
Okay. And I want to kind of ask the question that I don't know if you've seen on Instagram, that kid that goes around and asks millionaires and billionaires, you know, you probably know that guy. You maybe run into him. He's in Miami or in that area all the time. You know, what's one piece of advice you give to the younger generation?
You know, and this one's been said a bunch already by me, but it's something I don't think that you can oversay, or you can over explain, is that to find something in your life you're passionate about and do that relentlessly. And he's probably been given that advice before, I'm sure. But the way that I've made success in life, and the way that I've created, you know, all the opportunities, is by following my passion. back like we talked about in the very beginning, the only thing I could think about when I stopped taking drugs, being a drug addict, was that the only thing I loved, literally the only thing I could think that I loved was bodybuilding. But I was already, at the time, 26 years old. I was 6'2" or 6'2" plus Jewish guy with subpar genetics. And I couldn't be the next Dorian Yates, Lee Haney, Ronnie Coleman. Even though I would love to have been, I knew I couldn't be. But you know what I did see is I saw Joe Weider, I saw Ben Weider, I saw Peter McGuff, I saw Steve Bleckman. I saw people that I was like, you know what? I may not be able to be Lee Haney, but maybe there's a way that I could be Peter McGuff and be the editor-in-chief of Flex magazine. Maybe. I mean, that sounds like a thing I could maybe do. And so I pursued that passion relentlessly, even though it wasn't exactly what I would have loved to have done. It was tangential to it, and I was a part of it, and I did it, and I paid my dues, and eventually I made enough money to pay my bills. And then one day I made enough money to pay my family's bills.
Yeah.
So I mean, like that's the arc of my story, is from desperation of drug addiction to deciding what I love to do, and then following it relentlessly without ever giving up, believing there was even a chance that I would lose. Even when I believed it, I told myself there's no way. And I kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And I worked my ass off. Even if that starts at a McDonald's, working your ass off, and one day you become the owner of that McDonald's. I basically did that multiple times over along the way to finding success and getting here to talk to you today.
Yeah. It's coming to my head when you're talking. Who's one person in your life that was so pivotal that you would like to thank? Mentor, someone that just almost changed your life?
I mean, you know, I can go back. There's a few. I can go back to Dave Palumbo. Okay. Dave Palumbo was the first person. Like I happened to have the opportunity to have great parents. I had a great mom and great dad. My dad was a business owner. Unfortunately, the businesses all crumbled over a period of time. And then Hurricane Katrina happened, and then he was out of work. And so we had some tough times. So it's hard to look back at my dad's life and say, like, you know, as much as he taught me, I can't really say that he taught me how to work my ass off. But I saw Palumbo, you know, Palumbo work his ass off. He could have worked smarter, but you couldn't have worked harder. He worked all day, every day, and he expected the same thing from me. And when I worked at RX Muscle, Dave literally harassed me every day, all day. He would call me at midnight on Sundays and tell me to write the newest muscle gossip article, and he needed it before he went to bed at 3 a.m. I mean, like, the guy was a maniac, and he did not have an off button, and he just kept doing and doing and doing. And I saw for the first time in my life somebody working like that. He was in the press pit working all day long, tagging pictures, doing the play-by-play, and then all night long editing the videos and posting on RX Muscle. And he made me do it too. Yeah. And I never believed I had the ability to work like that. I thought it's not possible. I don't have the genetics, just like I have the genetics to have 23-inch arms. I don't have the genetics to work 24 hours a day. It's not possible. Yeah. But I watched Dave do it. He forced me to do it. And as a result, I took those lessons and I carried that forward. And I annoyed many, many generations of future employees with that same sort of work ethic, where I expected people to work hard because I worked hard. And I gave the example and showed people, hey, this is possible, just like Dave did it for me. Hopefully I did it in a little bit nicer way and hopefully a little smarter way. But Dave showed me the way of how to work your ass off. And that's something you very rarely see in this life, to somebody that is capable and willing to work like that, and also willing to push you to do the same.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Aaron, I appreciate your time. That was a long one, but I think there's so much that we discussed, man. And I really do appreciate you coming on the show and taking the time out of your day to do this with me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to come back on at any time when we have other controversial things that are polarizing to discuss.
Awesome. Awesome. Looking forward to that. All right. Well, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Bye. See you.
Every rep starts with fuel. Helix cream of rice, clean carbs, zero sugar, fast digesting energy that hits quick, fuels hard, and never sits heavy. 27 grams of pure carb power, nothing but rice and real flavor. Proudly made in Canada, built for champions. Grab yours now with code MUSCLEDISCORD. Helix Foods, fuel the work, own the stage.